Good afternoon. Playing musical mics here. I'm not sure which mic I was supposed to go to, but I'm here, and so are you. Give yourselves a round of applause for being here this afternoon. I am Denise Rollard Barnes. I'm publisher of Reading is Fundamental. No, I'm publisher of the Washington Informer newspaper. We are a newspaper that was started by my dad in 1964. I've been publisher now for since 1994. We serve DC, Maryland, and Virginia. But this election, for us, just as it is for you, a very, very important election. We have watched the city transition from into home rule and the fight for statehood, but we were around before we had home rule. And so one of the reasons why we think this election is so important is that it will get folks out, engaged, and protect the rights that district residents have long fought for, and that we will expand that, hopefully, to, if voters support it, statehood for the District of Columbia. So again, it's my pleasure to be with you this evening. I just told some of the candidates that are in the back and I get a little emotional about this, because running for office is not a game. It's serious work. And if you win, you know it's really serious work, because we have a lot of constituents, over 700,000 residents of the city, who are depending on local leadership to make sure that all people from all 8 wards, all ages, all the categories I can come up with are represented, and that the needs of the District of Columbia are first and foremost. And so even running is a challenge. To be a candidate is a challenge. And so you all coming out today shows that your interest and your support for the steps that they have taken. And we hope when you leave here, one of the questions I often ask is, how many people in the room are really undecided? That's enough. Even if one hand was raised, that would be enough. So I'm glad to see you here, that each candidate has to talk to you and to give you what you need to decide to give them your vote. And that's very important. So I'll stop there. I would now like to introduce the president of the Washington Association of Black Journalists, also a sponsoring organization, Mr. Phil Lewis.
Okay. Hello, everyone. How's it going? Ooh, are we awake? Okay. Yes, it's Saturday. It's okay. I know some of y'all were getting off the metro, single tracking. So was I. It took me a while to get here, but it's okay. We made it. So as Denise said, my name is Phil Lewis, president of the Washington Association of Black Journalists. We are one of the founding chapters of the National Association of Black Journalists, founded right here in DC in 1975. Thank you. Thank you. We're the largest chapter of NABJ. And actually, the Washington chapter just celebrated 50 years in DC. So we're excited about that. We are happy to be here with you all. And WJLA in particular has had a long history of supporting debates like these. If there are people in the room who remember News Channel 8, WBJ hosted a debate with Sharon Pratt Kelly, Marion Barry, and Councilman John Ray back in 1994 when I was 3 years old. So you know, we're happy that you all are here. We are the stakes, as you all know, are so high, especially for the upcoming debate, the delegate race. That is so important. I mean, this is a role that Eleanor Holmes Norton has held for 35 years, which is my entire life, right? So it's a really interesting time, I think, in DC, and so that's why we're here. That's why we came together to put this event on. And so what we'll have next is a video of the Greater Washington Urban League. I think if we're ready to show that video.
We serve families. We support wellness.
We create housing.
We build futures.
We prevent homelessness.
We strengthen neighborhoods.
GWL believes that every resident deserves opportunity, safety, and respect.
Awesome. Okay, round of applause for them. Thank you, as they are our sponsor of the event. And so now we will have Simone Ellison, Director of the Engagement of Strategic Partnerships for the Greater Washington, D.C. Black Chamber of Commerce. So please, round of applause for her. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. On behalf of the Greater Washington, D.C. Black Chamber of Commerce, again, my name is Simone Ellison, and I serve as the Director of Strategic Partnerships at the Chamber. We are proud to stand as a participating partner in convening this important civic dialogue. The Chamber was founded with a clear and enduring vision to advocate for and empower Black-owned businesses and entrepreneurs across the Greater Washington region. Our vision is centered on economic equity, ensuring that all businesses, regardless of size or background, have access to resources, opportunity, and policy environment needed to grow and scale. Historically, the Chamber has served as both a connector and catalyst, bridging relationships between business owners, policymakers, and institutional partners. Today, that role is more critical than ever. We operate at the intersection of business and policy, where decisions are made in government directly with sustainability, scalability, and our businesses within the community. Business owners are not just economic contributors, they are stakeholders in public policy. Whether it is conducting meetings, such as our Policy Forum Committee, or providing testimony, engaging in regulatory discussion, or shaping legislation, the voice of business community must be present, informative, and active. Policies focusing on procurement, taxation, workforce development, tech, creative economies, and access to capital all have real consequences for entrepreneurs across this city. In essence, we recognize that the DC government plays an integral role in fostering a strong business ecosystem. From regulatory framework to economic development initiatives, there is a shared responsibility between public leaders and private enterprises to create an environment where businesses can succeed. That partnership requires dialogue, accountability, and transparency. Today's debate is part of that process. It is an opportunity to hear directly from candidates about their priorities, their policies, and their vision for the future of Washington, D.C. And more importantly, it is a moment for all of us, business leaders, residents, and stakeholders, to engage thoughtfully and critically. I also want to take a moment to highlight the importance of the Chamber membership. Our members are at the core of everything that we do and who we are. They gain access to advocacy platforms, business development opportunities, strategic partnerships, and critical resources designed to help them grow and scale. We believe that business is personal. Membership is not just about joining an organization, it's about becoming a part of a collective voice that influences policy and drives economic impact across the region and international business community. If you are a business owner, entrepreneur, or professional looking to get more engaged, we encourage you to join us. You can learn more about becoming a member by visiting us at our website at gwbcc.org. We'd be glad to support your journey and welcome you to our network. We encourage you to listen closely and remain engaged today and beyond. Civic participation does not just end at the ballot box, it continues through consistent advocacy and partnership. Thank you to everyone who made this day possible, to the candidates, their staff, our volunteers, and most importantly, to the tireless work and unwavering passion of our fellow partners at the Washington Informer, the DC Democratic Party, and the Washington Association of Black Journalists for helping to make this day effortless and possible. I would now like to take the time to introduce Charles Wilson, Chair of the Democratic Party.
Well, hello, Democrats. Come on, okay. Hello, Democrats. All right. It is so awesome to see each and every one of you. My name is Charles Wilson. I have the honor as serving as chair of the DC Democratic Party. And on behalf of our entire organization, we want to welcome you to today's event. We are sure that this is going to be a great conversation and a very engaging conversation that you in the audience and those who are at home watching on YouTube are going to enjoy. I'd like to also take a moment to thank our co-sponsors for the event. You have heard from all of them. As Election Day approaches, each of us has an opportunity to shape the future conversation, political conversation in the District of Columbia. And with that opportunity comes responsibility to listen closely, to ask thoughtful and tough questions, and to evaluate the leadership qualities of those who are looking to serve. And most importantly, we all have the responsibility to vote, to encourage our friends and our neighbors to vote, and to be engaged in the process. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our moderators, Ms. Misha Green and Dr. Andre Perry. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to DCision 2026, Delegate and Mayoral Debate, presented by the Washington Informer. We are live from the Jack Morton Auditorium at George Washington University, and thank you to our partners, the DC Democratic Party, the Washington Association of Black Journalists, the Greater Washington Black Chamber of Commerce, and the Greater Washington Urban League. My name is Misha Green, and I'm managing editor at the Washington Informer.
And I'm Andre Perry, senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Thank you for everyone for joining us in person and those watching via live stream. Today's debate will focus on the issues most important to DC residents. Each debate will run approximately 75 minutes. Before we begin, let's review the format. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves for an opening statement. We will then move into 2 rounds of directed questions. In each round, every candidate will receive 1 question directed to them and will have 60 seconds to respond. The remaining candidates will each have 20 seconds to offer a response. Moderators may ask follow-up questions as time allows.
So next, we will have a lightning round, and all candidates will be asked the same 6 questions, and will have 30 seconds each to respond. There will be no follow-ups during this portion. Finally, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. Please note all questions are asked by the moderators, and we will be strictly enforcing time limits to ensure a fair and balanced discussion, and each candidate will receive equal opportunity to respond throughout the debate. We also ask our audience to remain respectful, and please hold applause until the conclusion of each segment and refrain from disruptions. And this debate is being recorded and live streamed, so thank you to all those tuning in. And with that, let's begin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're actually going to begin with our opening statements, and we're going to begin from our farthest left and work our way right. So please begin.
Great. Well, good afternoon. Thank you so much for hosting us today. And I want to thank the DC Democrats and the Black Journalists Association and the DC Black Chamber of Commerce for all that you do throughout the year in ensuring that our city is the success that it is. My name is Brooke Pinto. I have the privilege of serving as the Ward 2 council member, and I'm running to be our next congressional delegate to ensure that every Washingtonian has the opportunity for economic prosperity, that we build more affordable housing across our city and invite in new industries that are going to ensure everyone can thrive and afford to live here. I want to make sure that everyone can be safe. No matter what neighborhood you live in, you have the right to be safe in our city. And I want to protect our autonomy and ensure that we are the 51st state. I am so eager and excited to continue what I've done my entire career, which is serve district residents and work alongside you all to help solve problems. And while our city is under attack from this president and from a select few Republicans in Congress, I know that we need someone who can both protect our city and can leverage this moment into opportunities for everyone in our city, secure more resources from the federal government, and lean into our future. So thank you for being here, and hope to have your support on both June 16th and 1 week from this week, when ballots will go out to every single registered voter across the district.
Hi, my name is Greg Yatzko. I am a physicist by training. I came to Washington 27 years ago to work on Capitol Hill, and I brought all of my technical expertise to working on the public policy arena. I worked for then Congressman Ed Markey and Senator Harry Reid, the senator from Nevada. And after a few years on the Hill, I was eventually appointed to be chairman of the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission under President Obama. I dealt with many hard issues and tackled very challenging problems in all of those positions. And since leaving government, I work with young people to help them find positions in government, a job that I have found more challenging now because the Trump administration has launched an assault on the rule of law, on our federal workforce, and really on the district. And that's one of the reasons, and really the prime reason, why I decided to run in this race, because I felt I could do more to push back on what the Trump administration is doing and to help support the administration by running in this race than by perhaps just firing off angry tweets on my social media. So when I am elected, I intend to fight for statehood, and I intend to fight for it in a novel way. I think we have talked about no taxation without representation for a long time in the district. I think we need to focus on the taxation portion. And I will fight to ensure that the district is exempted from federal income taxes until we receive statehood. I will also tackle the cost of living challenge by working to reduce electricity prices, which is both a local and a national problem. And finally, I will work to restore the dignity and the opportunity that the federal workforce brings. We have lost tens of thousands of jobs since the Trump administration started in the federal workforce. And it's time we bring those back, because those jobs are an economic opportunity for people across the city, and we deserve their work and their contributions. So I look forward to a very interesting discussion tonight and to have your support ultimately on the election in June 16th. Thank you.
Well, thank you for hosting this event, and thank you so much to everybody in the audience for watching. I'm Trent Holbrook, and for the past 8 years, I was on the front lines of every single major federal fight for DC's future, fighting side by side with Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, including serving as her senior legislative counsel. When I started working for Congresswoman Norton, the DC statehood bill had been voted on only once in American history, in 1993, and the bill fell 2-1. They lost half the Democrats on the vote. I worked to make DC statehood the national issue that it is and that it deserves to be. We got over 100 national organizations to endorse the bill. I worked with those organizations, with DC residents, and with others, and we got a record number of co-sponsors on the bill. We took the bill from losing 2-1 in 1993 to passing in the U.S. House of Representatives for the very first time, and we did it not once, but we did it twice. The second time, every single House Democrat voted yes for statehood. I've also been the leader in Congress defending and advancing DC home rule. DC is under greater attack now than at least since the 1990s, and probably under greater attack than at any time since the Home Rule Act of 1973. But there is a reason. It's because we're so very close to achieving statehood. It's because we put in the work and we made the advances on statehood, and now we're knocking on the door of equality for all of our 700,000 residents in a way that we never have before. I fought with Congresswoman Norton against the illegal use of the National Guard troops in our streets and led the efforts for the House to pass the District of Columbia National Guard Home Rule Act. I also fought Trump's attempted illegal federalization of the Metropolitan Police Department. I also led the fight to protect our federal employees. I fought their illegal firings, fought to have them hired back with back pay and to give them pay raises and to improve their retirement. I also led the efforts to increase DC TAG awards by 50%, the first increase since the program was created in 1999. And so I'm the only candidate in the race who's ready to deliver for DC on day one, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here, and thank you for hosting and moderating. I'm at-large council member Robert White. I'm a fifth-generation Washingtonian, a husband, and a father. Now, I grew up in D.C., like a lot of D.C. residents, in a family that didn't have a prominent name. We struggled generation after generation to just try to make it. Now, I had the blessing to go on and become the first member of my family to graduate from college. I went on to law school, and while I thought I would do public policy for my city later in my career, there was an opportunity as a young lawyer to go to Capitol Hill and make a very little amount of money and do a lot of work for my city, working as legislative counsel to Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton. Because this city gave so much to me, I wanted to give back, and that was the best way to do it. So for 5 years, I worked with Congresswoman Norton on DC's budget, on projects like the Wharf, St. Elizabeth's, Navy Yard, Walter Reed, everything that affects DC voting rights, everything that affects us. But I would drive home from Capitol Hill to where I lived in Southeast and recognize that while there were cranes in the sky everywhere else in DC, my neighborhood still looked the same, and families like mine still were not doing any better in our best times than we were in the worst times. So with no business running for office, I quit my job to run for the council. For the past 10 years, I have represented this city with everything that I have. Now, my plan this time last year was to run for mayor. But it became clear to me, as it's become clear to most of you, that we may not have a mayor or council much longer if we don't have someone in Congress protecting our city and the little bit of home rule that we have. So I made that pivot. I'm gonna harness this unique time with people so angry, the country fighting about control of Congress, and use that to build on Congresswoman Norton's legacy, to achieve statehood, to make sure anybody in this country talking about redistricting to capture control of the House is talking about DC statehood so that we can capture control of the Senate with 2 Democratic senators from the District of Columbia. I've been endorsed by my colleagues on the council, by Senator Elizabeth Warren, by the Congressional Black Caucus, Congressional Progressive Caucus, by labor unions, by Free DC, but the endorsement I really need is yours, and so I'm asking for your vote in this historic moment.
Good afternoon, I'm Kinney Zalesny. I'm running for Congress because Trump is crushing our city, and we need an experienced national fighter who knows how to push back. By way of background, I've lived here for 30 years. I've raised 4 kids here. I worked in the White House. I was counsel to the Attorney General. I ran a college access nonprofit in Adams Morgan that helped thousands of DC students become the first in their families to go to college. I ran the strategy team at Microsoft, and in this last presidential cycle, I was a deputy national finance chair at the DNC and co-chair of Women for Kamala Harris. In all of those jobs, I had the privilege to fight for new resources for DC and win lasting results. So at the Justice Department, I helped beat back Republican efforts to kill after-school programs and other crime prevention programs. And when we got them passed, they brought down crime in this city faster and farther than had ever happened in American history. At the White House, I fought to make sure that every school and library in this city, especially in Ward 7 and 8, were wired for the internet. And at Peer Forward, the college access nonprofit, I helped drive the movement that boosted college enrollment in this city from under 40% to over 60%. And Barack Obama rewarded our success and our results with a big portion of his Nobel Peace Prize money. And I did all that without being a member of DC Council. And I will put my record of new resources and lasting results for this city against anyone else who's served in this city. Now, I want to say something quick about this, about the delegate job. It's an unusual job. It's not like any other job in this city or any other job on Capitol Hill. Eleanor Holmes Norton was elected to this seat 36 years ago, and in that time had no serious opposition. So 80% of today's voters could not vote the last time this city had a serious conversation about what this job is and who should fill it. And I look forward to that conversation in today's debate.
Thank you. Thank you all for your introductions. We're going to the first round, which is talking governance, representation, and federal strategy.
And just a reminder, each candidate will be directed a question, and they will be given 1 minute to respond. Now, moving from left to right, the following candidates will respond and only have 20 seconds to respond. And it's my understanding they will cut the mic, so be warned. The first question, many have described the DC statehood movement as having stalled on Capitol Hill. As DC's delegate goes to Congress, what specific strategies would you pursue to revive momentum for statehood at the federal level? And we're going to start with Brooke.
Well, we need to make sure that every American knows that it is an American interest to have representation. It is provided for in the Constitution that we have a representative democracy, and we are not living up to the Constitution by failing to have representation for the residents of Washington, D.C. We also have to recognize that we are in a hyper-partisan environment. We have Republicans around the country who have never been shy about saying, we don't want D.C. to be a state because it would mean you'd have 2 Democratic senators. You know what? They're absolutely right. We're going to have 2 Democratic senators, and we should be loud and proud about that, which is why this should be the #1 piece on the Democratic Party platform. I just spoke to Ken Martin about this last week. It's why it is now the #1 piece of the DC Young Democratic Party platform, who I've met with all the chapter presidents about ensuring that's a reality. And I'm going to build on what Walter Fauntroy did, who held this seat before Congresswoman Norton, who went around the country making that case to Americans outside of DC. We've got to take the show on the road and make statehood a reality.
Greg, 20 seconds.
Oh, I don't get a minute?
No,
20 seconds.
20 seconds.
Oh, okay. No, sorry. Okay, well, I think as I said in my introduction, I'll focus on exempting DC residents from federal income taxes, because I think this is the key way that we can generate a discussion nationally around the lack of statehood in DC and the injustice that that creates. And it will keep that $30 billion that we send to the federal government, for which we have no real control over, and make sure that that money stays in the district until we get the equal footing of a state.
Having just worked for Congressman Norton until January, I have to disagree, and I do not think that the DC statehood movement has stalled. I think we've made historic progress, and we've continued to make it the national issue that it really needs to be and that it deserves to be. And we've used every single opportunity, and that's what I do, is use every opportunity to advance DC statehood and to advance DC home rule. So for example, whenever Trump oversteps in DC, he federalizes or uses the National Guard in the streets, we do things like fight back and get additional co-sponsors on statehood and pass the District of Columbia National Guard Home Rule Act.
Robert.
We are going to tap into the anger around the country and this motivation for people to capture Democratic control of Congress. That is the #1 argument for DC statehood now. We're not going to make DC a state because it's the right thing to do. If that were the case, that would have happened already. We're also going to use coalitions like the folks that have endorsed me, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Progressive Caucus, some of the largest caucuses in Congress, to stand behind us nationally on this issue, and I've already started that groundwork.
Kenny?
Since I have just 20 seconds, I'm going to just tell you one big idea. We need a national marketing campaign that's run right here in DC to tell our own residents and the 30 million Americans who come visit our city what it means to us to not be a state. So we need signs on our airport walls, on the walls of Union Station, on the sides of our buses that say, "Welcome to DC, we're the last colony," or whatever is the right message. And we need a little museum that about DC statehood, and people can enter.
Thank you. As we know, and this is for you, Greg, as we know, DC is a non-voting congressional district, but what does success in Congress look like to you? How do you plan to fight for DC residents at a national level? You have a minute, and everyone else have 20 seconds.
Well, certainly it is not a voting position, but it is a position in Congress. So that gives you all of the other advantages and opportunities that you have as a member of Congress. And a key piece of that, of course, is the bully pulpit and the ability to communicate. So on the issues that I will advocate for, I have experience communicating to a national audience, to building coalitions to do that. But I also have a key role to play as the delegate in ensuring that the government works for the district. So much of what we need done here in the district isn't about changing laws. It's not about changing the Constitution. It's about getting the agencies that administer those laws to operate appropriately and to do the right things. Right now, we have the Trump administration who's leading an assault on the federal government that is damaging those institutions. So there are many examples, for instance, some of the inequality that we see in Ward 7 and Ward 8 with appraisals of property appraisals. This was an issue that was addressed a little bit in the Biden administration with a task force. That task force was eliminated under the Trump administration. Those are the kinds of administrative actions that I have experience with that I can help bring back and actually make progress on these issues without legislation.
Thank you, Trent.
Despite not having to vote on final passage of bills, the entire time that I was working with Congresswoman Norton, she was consistently ranked as one of the most effective, if not the most effective, Democratic lawmaker in Congress by nonpartisan academics. And so I know how to use the legislative process. I've worked with Congressman Norton to use the legislative process to deliver for DC. And just yesterday on DC Statehood Day, I also released an extensive plan on how to further the powers and authorities of the DC delegate in Congress. And so that can include things like voting on impeachment and voting to bring bills to the House floor.
Member White.
Statehood will always be the North Star, and I believe that I will get us there as our delegate. But in the meantime, I'm going to work to get on the Appropriations Committee, the Money Committee. DC's delegate being on that committee would mean more power in Congress than DC has ever had. In addition, we're going to nationalize this seat. People can't support DC issues or DC statehood if they don't understand DC. I'm going to make sure the country understands how disenfranchised we are.
I think this job is two things, and conveniently for us, they rhyme. It's autonomy and economy. Autonomy we've been talking about. It's everything up to and including statehood. But the other big piece of this job is to reimagine and replan our economy to be less dependent on the federal government. We learned the hard way this year that we're a company town and the company hates us. And I'm the only one with business experience and can bring us new jobs.
Well, when you don't have traditional power, you have to have the power of persuasion, which means that we have to build a broader coalition to secure wins for our city. That means making sure that we have opportunity at enterprise zones in our city to expand opportunity for our residents and businesses. That means transferring some of our national park land so our families can use it. That means ensuring that these vacant GSA buildings are used for housing and needs of our residents. That is an interest that we can build coalition support, even without a vote on the Hill.
Now our next question will first be addressed by Trent, and it is, what is your strategy for building relationships with representatives across the country to advance DC's priorities in Congress?
Sure. So I've done this for the past 8 years, working with Congresswoman Norton. And one of the ways that you do that is you work with members who are there. They come to DC, and so you can have a relationship with them, obviously. But the other way that you can do this is by working with the national coalition that we helped to build with over 100 national organizations that endorse the DC statehood bill. So you work with those organizations, and those organizations can also continue to influence members of Congress throughout the country. And so it's about forming those national ties, national coalitions, and then showing, educating members of Congress what DC is. And that's what we've done for 8 years, educating that we are 700,000 people in the District of Columbia. We pay all of our taxes. We pay more taxes per capita than any state. And going through all those elements of why we deserve statehood and why we deserve home rule.
Look, we start with our regional members and we work outwards. I know all of the regional members from the House. I've had many of them over my home. From there, we work with the national coalitions like the NAACP that have a vested interest like we do in equal voting rights. We have to make sure we start at home and build out. Every time a new member of Congress gets elected, I can reach out to them. I reach out to them to tell them that DC is disenfranchised and we will need their help in this work.
I was a deputy national finance chair at the DNC, so for years I have worked with Democrats across the nation, in the House, in the Senate, in the leadership, in the rank and file. And we need to deepen, we need to elevate the priority of DC across the Democratic Party. We'll get to the Republicans after that. But first we need the partners and allies in our own party who frankly have us on the list, but they never have us at the top of the list. I have those relationships. I've been endorsed by members of Congress in the right, left, and center of the Democratic Party. That's the breadth and depth and longstanding nature of my relationships on the Hill, and I can open doors for this city.
Brooke, again, just a reminder, what is your strategy for building relationships across the country?
There are relationships that I have been building for years. I'm so proud that just yesterday, U.S. Senator Angela Alsobrooks endorsed my campaign, who is one of those regional partners that we need to rely on. I work with members across the region and the country to defeat efforts like they're taking $4 billion from our Medicaid that we fought back against, to convince Speaker Johnson to remove from consideration his bills that would have ever disallowed us from changing our laws.
All right, Greg.
So I've also had a long career building coalitions, but what I found the most effective strategy is to work at the local community level. So for example, when I was the head of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, one of the things that I would do is visit nuclear power plants. And that was not something, it was something that chairman always did, but one of the things I did uniquely was I would reach out to the local community groups and the local elected officials and have meetings with those individuals to hear about their concerns. And I think that's where you begin to establish dialogue, which is crucial for making progress.
Thank you all. Councilmember White, this goes to you first. Eleanor Holmes Norton has been the DC delegate for 35 years. What has remained unresolved under her tenure that you would approach differently?
One of the most important things, and I recognize Congresswoman Norton and how much she has done for this city, which we will never forget. But the best way to pay tribute to someone's legacy is to build on top of it. The nation has changed since she was elected. We've changed in a way that people are ready for Democrats to be aggressive at moving us in the right direction. I do not believe 2 years ago or 20 years ago, we could have gotten the Democratic Party to force DC statehood as a power issue, but we can now. I don't believe DC residents 2 years ago or 20 years ago were angry enough to go by the thousands into swing states or swing districts or the district of any member of Congress that votes against DC's interests, but they are now. The work of Free DC and other statehood coalitions are showing that. People are hungry for a leader that can direct our energy and our resources. I'm going to be that leader and build on top of what Congresswoman Norton did. This is our time to get statehood. This is our time for DC to be taken seriously in Congress, but we need a leader ready to seize it on day one.
Yet there are two parts of building on her legacy. One is we need a broader base of coalition partners than even she was able to bring to us. And as I said, I've been endorsed by the right, left, and center of the Democratic Party. We need everyone, not just the narrow groups that have stood loyally by her. And second, we need to rethink our economy. That wasn't true for most of her leadership, but it is now, because we've had a full frontal assault on our economy by this administration. And we need someone with business experience, business.
Councilmember Pinto.
We are in a different time now in 2026 than we have been over the last 36 years. And so I honor and cherish the legacy of Congresswoman Holmes Norton. And I think the biggest difference we need to lean into is accepting new industries to come here. We are in an AI revolution. And if we don't get this right and properly regulate it to keep residents safe, we're gonna miss the boat and wish we had done it sooner.
Well, again, her legacy is tremendous, but there are still issues that are longstanding in the district. We have significant disparities in income between Ward 7 and Ward 8 and the rest of the district. Maternity outcomes in Ward 7 and Ward 8 are completely different than they are in the rest of the district. Those are issues that we continue to need progress on, and we need the federal government to assist the district in really achieving positive outcomes on those issues.
So Congresswoman Norton is one of the greatest lawmakers in American history. She was consistently ranked while I was there as one of the most effective lawmakers on Capitol Hill. She was my law professor before that, so I've known her for many years. And I loved working with Congresswoman Norton. I enjoyed working with her, getting to know her. And the biggest thing that we need to do is get statehood over the final hurdle. And we are so close to statehood now than we've ever been because of all that work that we've put in. And we just need to get it finally over that last little bit. And we'll hopefully do that whenever we have a Democratic president and the Democratic trifecta after the next election as well.
Now, the next question is around media, and we know that the media has been under attack over the last year or so. As the federal footprint in Washington, D.C. continues to shape the daily lives of district residents, how would you ensure that independent local media outlets have the access and support they need to cover these impacts? And would you advocate for federal or local policies that strengthen and sustain local journalism? And we'll go to you, Kenny.
A strong community of local journalists is what will save democracy. What has happened to the Washington Post in this city is a tragedy and a travesty. And I applaud the rest of the journalistic ecosystem in this city for stepping up to fill the vacuum. We have got to fight for journalistic freedom, journalistic integrity, because they are the front line of defense for our democracy. And I want to thank the journalists in this city who are really, truly trying to tell the stories that are not obvious and are trying to go beyond the conventional wisdom and see what's really happening in this city. Because every ward in this city needs to know better what's happening in the other wards, and every other American needs to know what's happening in DC. It's critical that the nation's capital be the exemplar of democracy so that we can save it for everybody else across the country.
Well, my sister, who's here today, was a local journalist across America for a decade. I value this work. I appreciate this work. I think an additional way that we need to lean in is on oversight. It cannot be that the president continues to eviscerate our local journalists, and that's where Congress can step in to ensure that we support an independent press, which, just like being a state and having representation, is vital to our democracy.
My wife is a journalist as well, so I have to get this question right. I think Brooke makes a good point. We have to recognize that this president is assaulting all of our rights, including the First Amendment. And one of the key issues that we need to recognize is necessary is to talk about impeachment. The president will trample on the rights of journalists. The president will trample on all of our rights. And it's time that we stand up and that the Congress stands up and pushes back on that overreach.
I completely agree. Independent media is so incredibly important. I would work, as I have with Congressman Norton, I worked on appropriations issues, and I would use the appropriations process to a way that would be effective and helpful in that. And I would also stand up to Trump's continuous attacks on the media. I would look to serve on the House Oversight for many different reasons, but I think that this would make a great oversight hearing. Why is the President of the United States attacking the media over and over and over?
Look, in a democracy, the people are supposed to govern, but the people cannot govern if they don't have information. That is why our media has been decimated. I'm going to fight for federal funding for local media, but I'm also going to fight for federal funding for Black and brown newspapers that continue to put out story, for Black and brown folks on social media like Elizabeth Booker, who are making sure that stories that don't get told by traditional media are getting told. We're going to wake this country back up so that they can continue to push back. If we don't, the consequences will be as real as the loss of democracy.
Now, just a reminder, please silence your phones and please hold your applause till the end of the segment. And that was appropriate applause because we're going into round number 2
Yes.
around my favorite topic, policy, equity, and community impact.
Indeed. So if you guys need to get it out to stretch those muscles, you're more than welcome to give your round of applause now. First question is for Councilmember Pinto. Federal layoffs and workforce reductions continue to affect the economic stability of many DC residents, particularly in low-income communities and communities of color. As DC delegate to Congress, how would you advocate at the federal level to address these impacts and support policies that strengthen local economic resilience and entrepreneurship?
Well, here in DC, we honor our public service and our public servants who have moved this country forward in immeasurable ways. And the DOGE cuts that have led to the reduction of a loss of 100,000 jobs for DC residents that we've been impacted by is an absolute travesty. And it's imperative that our congressional delegate is strong on supporting our federal workforce, is strong on helping people upskill and learn other skills to be part of the economy in other places if they have lost their job. We've been working on this at the local level to try to fill some of our local vacancies with these excellent federal workers who have lost their job. And it's imperative that we invite new industries to DC. I have several bills right now under consideration in the council to incentivize businesses to grow here and to relocate their headquarters here if they hire at least 25 district residents. We have got to be bold about ensuring that all of our residents have access to great paying jobs.
Well, I ran a federal agency, so I understand what it takes to support and defend the federal workforce. And I quite simply have not seen that from anyone in the Congress right now. I knew immediately the day that DOGE was created that everything they were doing was illegal. And I would have, had I been in Congress, pushed back much harder. But there's also small things that we can do. For instance, we can look at how contracting works. So set-asides for small and independent businesses are not right now going to prime contracting. They're going to subcontracting. That's a little piece where we can begin to make progress in the district on getting those federal funds.
I worked for Congressman Norton for the past 8 years on federal employee issues, and those issues are more important now than ever. I worked with her to fight the illegal firings of our federal employees by DOGE, and I fought to have them rehired with back pay. I also made sure the federal employees had back pay after shutdowns, and so I've delivered on this issue. I worked at a federal agency, several federal agencies, and so I know what it's like to be a federal employee.
I told my daughter just yesterday that you'll never learn how to swim by reading a book about how to swim. You have to have experienced it. All of us will argue that we have the experience at the national level, but I'm on a panel with people who don't know the real lived experiences of people who can't afford to miss one paycheck. What happens when someone gets laid off? What happens when food programs get cut? What happens when the Voting Rights Act gets gutted? We need somebody in that seat who knows this, not just theoretically, but truly and in their soul.
One of the great triumphs of this city, and it's not true in any other city across the country, one of the great triumphs was the creation of the Black middle class. And that was directly and deliberately because of the growth of the federal government. And Trump knows it. The DOGE program was not about efficiency, we know that. It was about destroying the Black middle class. And we have got to take that personally, and we have got to be outraged, and we've got to fight for those jobs to come back in a Democratic administration, and we've got to diversify the economy so we are.
All right, thank you. Our next question, and Greg Yasko, you'll have the opportunity to address it in a minute. Rising costs have displaced longtime DC residents. How will you help to ensure that the federal government plays a role in addressing Washington's housing affordability crisis?
Well, thank you. This is certainly a very significant question, and it's one where you really need to have a combination of federal support for local action. The affordability crisis that we're dealing with is multifaceted. Housing is certainly a piece of it. Another piece of it is the ability for people to stay in homes. As property values increase in communities, we want to see that those people living in those communities are able to stay in their homes so that we increase the opportunities for home ownership. One of the programs that's been severely decimated by the Trump administration is an opportunity for alternative credit programs to allow people who may not have significant credit history to afford a home and to buy a home. That's an area that I will specifically focus on working on to reestablish that program and ensure that we can give people an access to credit to be able to buy and afford homes or stay in a home that maybe they're converting from renting. So the issue is, however, not just isolated to housing. It is an affordability question. And a big piece of that right now is in the energy space and electricity. And there are things we can do immediately in the district to reduce electricity costs, as well as at the federal level to ensure that affordability becomes easier for everyone.
DC residents are absolutely facing an affordability crisis. I've talked with thousands of DC residents, and that's what I hear over and over and over. There previously was a first-time homeowners tax credit that was available for DC residents. It expired before I started working for Congressman Norton. I would work to bring that back and adjust it for inflation. It would be about $7,500. The wait time for public housing vouchers is also too long, so we need to significantly increase our federal funding on that area as well.
I haven't just read the reports. I have lived the displacement. As a fifth-generation Washingtonian, almost none of my family still lives in D.C. Now, on the federal level, I'm going to do work that I did when I used to work for Norton and work to transfer land to DC so we can build affordable housing. But it's going to be on the council to make sure that the housing we built is affordable. I voted against the stadium deal because they would not guarantee affordable housing on a timeline, while one of my colleagues running for Congress now had no problem with that. That is why it is not enough to just read the data. You've got to know the real issue.
I want to amend the Height Act in Congress so that we have the ability to build taller in this city, and that will enable us to provide more affordable housing. I want to expand the Section 8 federal housing voucher program so there's more money in it and so that it's more flexible. People can use it for first-time mortgages and give people more access to our housing stock. And I want to hold our DC council members accountable for insufficient oversight of our local housing agencies.
Thank you. Brooke?
Well, I'm the only candidate who has laid out a bold federal plan to address the housing affordability crisis. It's called Breaking Ground DC. I hope you read about it on my website. It does dozens of things, everything from repealing the Federal Height Act so we can build higher and denser, building more housing above transit, making sure that we're making rent tax deductible, because we can't do everything at a local level when we have a housing chair who has foregone $35 million of federal money that we had to return because of the lack of oversight.
Next question, and this is for you, Trent. DC recently received a failing grade for ozone pollution, and the impacts fall disproportionately on communities of color. As DC's delegate, what specific federal policies or investments would you push for to improve regional air quality and protect the most affected communities?
Sure. So we've seen studies after studies showing how there are disparate impacts on different communities from the environment. One of the main things that I would do is I would fight to protect DC's strong environmental laws, and that's what I've done. So for example, Congress recently tried to overturn DC's fuel efficiency standards, and so I worked with Congressman Norton to make sure that that rider that was in an appropriations bill was never enacted. I would also make sure that DC gets all the federal funding that it should receive as a state. Too often DC is not treated as a state, it's treated as a territory. So whenever there's federal funding that also goes toward environmental programs, I would do exactly what I've done for the past 8 years and make sure that we get an equal part of that pie as well.
When I worked for Congresswoman Norton, among other things, I handled environmental policy. We worked on restoring our rivers and estuaries. We worked on making sure that we greened federal buildings whenever we had a chance. On the council, I have continued to work, sometimes against the administration and other council colleagues, to make sure that we are improving the environment. So we need somebody who is really committed to what is the biggest causes of many of our young people who are going to have to live the consequences of our inaction. I'm going to make sure we take action.
I have proposed a capital caucus in Congress. It will be led by me as the DC delegate. It will include our neighboring representatives from Maryland, Virginia, and other nearby states. I originally proposed this as an economic growth strategy, but what I have come to realize is that this is critical for our environmental strategy too, and healthcare. But on the environmental side, we saw, again, the hard way this year, poison doesn't stop at our borders. What happened in Maryland came into our waterways, and it can't fall to us to clean it up. We have to have a...
Thank you.
DC is proudly leading the nation in our environmental protections. That should continue. We also cannot let that come at the expense of building more affordable housing, which is the #1 crisis facing district residents. I also want to secure $130 million from the federal government to clean up the Anacostia River so that it could be appropriately swimmable, fishable from the Anacostia and the Potomac, which is 2 of our greatest treasures in the district.
So I ran a safety agency, a regulatory agency, so I'm very familiar with how we can make federal government and these regulatory agencies work better. For instance, some of the challenges with cleanup on the Anacostia come from the fact that the land on the banks of the Anacostia is National Park Service land. So efforts to improve the Anacostia require permits from the National Park Service, which take forever. I know how to get an agency to move forward and move forward more quickly. And in the long term, we'll transfer that land back to the district so we don't have to go through the National Park Service for those kinds of actions.
You know, usually we talk about education, we talk about the babies, we talk about the children, but I want to move it to the adults. And Councilman White, you have a minute to respond to this. Adult literacy affects not just jobs, but families and children across DC. What is your plan to help adults improve their literacy, and how will you make it a priority?
One of my first visits after I was elected to the council, before I was even sworn in, was to the Washington Literacy Center. And I saw mothers, grandmothers, and fathers who didn't know how to read, who wanted to show their babies that it was never too late. And I've worked on the council to support them and others similar. But what we recognize that this is an issue that is too big for most jurisdictions to address financially. So we need federal funding that will be dedicated. But beyond that, we have a lot of folks who are literate who still can't work. That is why I have fought so hard for expansion of trade and vocational education opportunities for our young adults and our adults in DC. That is work that I plan to replicate in Congress for our nation. In a time when AI is disrupting almost every industry, the industries that are not interrupted are the ones where people are working with their hands. Those are industries where you can come out of high school making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 and get back those middle-class jobs that we've lost over the past decades.
The great Jimmy Williams, I think, is in the room, or maybe he's in the hallway, but he has done extraordinary work at the Washington Literacy Center, and I'm very grateful to all that he has taught me and for his role in organizing this event today. Look, this city is getting very good at second chances, which is so important. Teaching adults to read, teaching returning citizens to recover. But I want to do more for first chances. I want to get in when it's early and help people thrive before they have to get to the second chance.
Councilperson Pinto?
Well, I met with an elementary school teacher at KIPP who told me that she was spending her own money on paying for instructional materials to teach her kids how to read in the classroom, which is why I put together a task force, worked with the State Board of Education, and passed the most sweeping literacy reform legislation and investments, and DC is now the fastest improving literacy jurisdiction in the country.
So this is an issue that is fundamentally a local, or what should be a state in the district, state issue. So at the federal level, the goal is ultimately to provide resources where necessary. But one of the disadvantages that the district has is a federal law that prevents us from collecting income taxes from people who work in the district. One of the ways that I would address this issue to bring more resources to the district to work on all of these great programs that people have talked about is to eliminate that restriction and allow us to tax the people in Maryland and Virginia who come into the district. So DC will have more resources to put to these kinds of problems, which should be state and local problems and challenges.
I agree. I think this is primarily a local issue, but we should absolutely apply federal funding to this issue as well. I did earmark work for Congressman Norton, which is directed congressional spending at specific programs. And this is the type of program that we would look at and the type of program that I would consider as making part of our earmark requests.
Alrighty, so it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I like this question a lot because of this. We'll start with you, Kenny. What is one quality you admire in your fellow candidates, and how do you believe that trait would help them succeed in this role if elected? I think it's the time to uplift one another.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kitty.
Well, I'm happy to do that, but you said it was a mental health question. I thought you were going to ask me to comment on the mental health of my competitors. That seemed like treacherous terrain.
No.
Okay. Look, I have gotten to know my competitors we have done more of these forums than you can imagine. I see these people more than I see my family. And I have come to know that they all care very deeply about this city. They believe passionately in the things they're advancing. And I know that each of them is very devoted to their families and to the people who support them. I am lucky to have that same situation, but I know it's true of all of them. And I appreciate that they come from a place of strength and they're trying to offer strength and stability to everybody across the city.
Thank you, Councilmember Pinto.
Well, I echo Kitty's sentiment, and it has been great getting to spend some time with you all this spring. I guess I would add, I think that you all are very effective communicators, especially in a truncated timeline like 20 seconds that I sometimes struggle with, to get your points across, and that is a skill that would certainly benefit the district in Congress.
Well, I think as Kenny said, I think seeing, as we go to these different events, seeing the family of the people who are running up here is great. And I've gotten to meet the family of some of the people up here. My own family is here. My kids finally came to an event, so that's helping with my mental health. But it has been a nice opportunity to get to know everyone and to see that everyone is dedicated to the city in different ways, and they have contributed in different ways. And so I think the district is very fortunate that we will be represented by one of the people on this stage.
And I would echo what everybody else has said too, and just the serious devotion to public service that I've seen from all of the candidates on the stage.
2 nights ago, we shared the stage together, and one of my thoughts is, while I want to win, I thought we're going to have the first transition in this seat in 36 years, and what we all worried about for decades was that it would be a circus, and there'd be so many people running who shouldn't be running that we would have somebody that would dim the legacy of Congresswoman Norton, but I think we have a field of good candidates.
With that, closing of that segment, give them a round of applause.
So it's time for some delegate quick hitters.
Quick hitters, and each candidate is given the same question. You have 30 seconds to answer, and we're going to start with Brooke. DC voters will use ranked choice voting for the first time in this election. What do you want voters to consider when deciding how to rank candidates beyond their first choice?
Well, I was proud to be a co-introducer of ranked choice voting. I was proud to support ensuring that it got the funding it needed and deserved because DC residents voted for it. And I think that candidate voters should consider not just who's going to say they're going to fight for you, but who can deliver on the results that our city and our residents deserve.
Oh, yeah, this one's easy. Everybody should rank me number 2. I think that's that's the simple. No, I think this election is, well, they should. I think this election's about what we've done. It's about experience and about your ability to get things done. And that's what I've been able to do in my government career, whether it was working in the House, working in the Senate, running a federal agency, dealing with a major international nuclear crisis. So I bring that experience, and I think that warrants ranking certainly number 1, but if not, then number 2.
Trent, beyond the first choice.
Sure, I think that's absolutely right. I think you have to look at the experiences everybody brings to the table. I, for example, worked on the Capitol Hill and for an executive agency, and I think look at the type of background that everybody brings that's similar to that or that's different to that too, and to have diversity in the election.
Look, these are turbulent times, and we recognize that. And power is corrupting, even for many of the most well-intended people. So as you rank people, I want you to think who in the midst of the fire is going to stand up and have backbone even when it's hard to protect the people who are being trampled over, Black and brown people, the middle class. Who is going to stand up? And those are the people you should rank.
I think I agree with all that. So I want to take this opportunity to regret that the DC Council did not fund the other half of the initiative that brought us ranked choice voting and did not fund semi-open primaries. So there are like 80,000 independent voters who can't vote in the only primary that matters. And the reason that's a problem, it's not just because I wish those people had votes. The reason it's a problem is you can't fight for statehood if you yourself didn't give everyone in your own city the right to vote in the important elections. So whether you voted against it or you failed to build a coalition in favor of it, you failed the DC voters on that front. And anyone you ask for statehood will laugh you out of the room.
Thank you all. Next question. Should federal contracting prioritize equity for DC-based and minority-owned businesses or remain focused on lowest cost and open competition? And Councilmember Pinto. Oh, excuse me, Greg.
Sure. Yeah, so, many of these issues come down really to what's in the law. So, we talk a lot about how we're going to change the law, how we're going to do things differently. But we have a lot right now of statutes that ensure that we are using federal dollars in a way that can help disadvantaged businesses. But that really comes down to an oversight question and the need to make sure that agencies are following those laws and following those rules. And that's something that I can do, having run a federal agency very effectively. I know how the bureaucracies work. I know how to make sure that agencies are doing the right thing. As I mentioned earlier, more contracts going to prime contractors for small and disadvantaged businesses rather than as subcontractors. That's a key place where we can make a substantive difference just by working to ensure the bureaucracy implements the law the right way.
Yes, it's critically important that we do that. So I, for example, worked with Congresswoman Norton on legislation and policy that she had to report on contracts to minority-owned advertising for federal dollars. And that's critically important as well. And we need to continue looking at that going forward for other areas as well. And so we made sure that agencies reported on that type of advertising dollars that were spent and how much was spent on minority companies. And so we would expand that and do that for other contracting as well.
If you run a 100-yard dash race and your competitors get a 10-second head start, they're going to win every time. They've been able to build bigger businesses. They can charge less, and that means that Black and brown and women-owned companies have not had the same length of time to build. So we must, without question, give preference points to CBEs. If we don't do this, then we are continuing inequity that was built in deep racism in this country, and we cannot do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I long for the day when everyone can compete on an equal footing and equal ground, and we can just look at talent and potential. But when some people weren't given a fair chance to start at the starting line in the same place, you can't pretend everything's equal, and we still have some inequities to address. But I long for the day when we've solved that problem.
Well, I guess I would say respectfully, I reject the premise that others make in the public that we can't have a preferential treatment of our local minority and business and women-owned businesses and have a competitive economy. We have some of the most important preferences for our minority and women-owned businesses in DC, and that is a strength to demonstrate to people that we take diversity and inclusion seriously. Our businesses are thriving as a result of it, and that's something we're very proud of, and we need to communicate that at a federal level so that we can have federal policies that match and bolster the strength of our preferences here in DC. And I will say, I've taken some difficult and controversial votes that not everybody has shared to make sure that we continue to support our CBEs.
All right, our next question is around funding Metro. Should the federal government have a permanent funding commitment to Metro, or should it remain primarily a regional responsibility? Trent, it's up to you.
Yes, it should absolutely have permanent funding. That's the easy answer. And so I would work with my colleagues in the region, just as I've worked with them for the past 8 years with Congressman Norton, with the members from Virginia and from Maryland, to make sure that we have this critical funding and that we can address all of the needs that Metro faces. I ride Metro every single day to and from work when I work for Congressman Norton, so I know how critically important that is.
When I worked for Congresswoman Norton and handled transportation, I worked on what's known as PREA, which is the federal funding currently for Metro, which is so outdated and not nearly enough. The reason that the region, including Congresswoman Norton, argued for this federal funding is because this is the nation's transit system. It is also the federal workforce's transit system. They were a partner in creating it, but then they abandoned us to fund it. DC taxpayers are carrying an unfair freight for the maintenance of this system that was built by the federal government. So I'm going to fight for a lot of federal funding to reduce the burden on you and me.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We are such a serious public transit family that when my son, who's now 23, was 5, what he wanted for his birthday was a framed map of the Metro system. And it's still hanging on the wall of his childhood bedroom. That's, in our family, we take the Metro everywhere, we take the bus everywhere. That's one of the reasons I love this city. And our regional partners and our national partners need to help us protect it and grow it and safeguard it, because it's a jewel of our capital and it's a jewel of the country.
Agreed. We have an incredible transit system that has to be protected and fought for, not only with DC funding, but with federal funding and fair funding from Maryland and Virginia. And to date, we have not gotten sufficient funding from our neighboring jurisdictions, which is exactly why these relationships are so important. It is the first thing I speak to with Governor Moore about. It's the first thing I speak to with Governor Spanberger about every time we have a conversation, because the state funding needs to also match our local DC funding.
I agree with much of what's been said. The one aspect I think I'll point out is, again, this is another area in which we reflect the disparity in the district status as a territory or a colony, I think is the term we're now starting to use. We need to have equal footing with Maryland and Virginia when it comes to discussions and negotiations about how we fund Metro. That means we need to be a state. So it's just one more area in which the fact that we're not a state reflects in an injustice. And so again, I will work hard to make sure we get statehood.
Thank you. So this next question, I have to say, our Washington Informer readers have been asking since August. And we'll start with you, Councilmember White. Who should control the DC National Guard, the mayor or the president?
The mayor should control the DC National Guard. The mayor is our chief executive here in the District of Columbia, and every other chief executive controls their National Guard. But if that wasn't enough, then January 6th should underscore why the mayor of DC should control the National Guard. But for DC's mayor and our police department, the Capitol would have been taken over. So we need a mayor in this capital city who knows how to deal with these national issues to control the National Guard. And the last person who should control the National Guard when the next certification of the next president happens at the end of Donald Trump's term is Donald Trump should be the last person to control the Guard.
That's totally right. The mayor, like every governor across the nation, should control our National Guard. And as I understand it, this issue can be fixed statutorily. It's not tied up in the rest of the home rule legislation. It's its own quirk it's its own mistake that we don't have, that our mayor doesn't have control over our National Guard. And it's one of the first problems I want to fix.
Well, I think Congresswoman Norton has done an excellent job on this issue in making the case of absolutely it should be the mayor who has control of our own local National Guard, like every other governor across the country. I will also add what we've seen from the president of this unsafe and uncalled for over response to a made up issue where he has sent in National Guard troops from over a dozen states who are armed, who are not properly trained. That's why I've worked with our local National Guard to make sure that they're not patrolling around our schools. Our kids don't need that exposure to armed guards. And we have to take this seriously. We have to make sure people around the country know the injustice that's continuing to happen under his watch.
Yes, I would say it's the governor of the Douglas Commonwealth that should control the National Guard here. And that's why we need statehood. It's yet one more reason. Until we do get statehood, then I would agree that with others that it should be the mayor that controls the National Guard. And historically, it is not an accident. The National Guard is under control of the Congress, of the president, because the Congress and the president have wanted it that way. And it's just part of the injustice of us not being a state and not being recognized as a state.
Yes, the mayor should absolutely have control. And I've worked on this issue with Congressman Norton for 8 years, and we passed in the House of Representatives for the first time the District of Columbia National Guard Home Rule Act, which would give control over the Guard to the mayor. We passed as part of the National Defense Authorization Act. And so I know how to move legislation for the District of Columbia through other pieces of legislation they're passing, and that's how we got that bill passed. And we made historic progress on bringing that to DC and got that passed in the House for the first time. Now we just need to get it to the Senate as well.
Now, as we close, I have one more question for the potential delegates. At a recent House oversight hearing, a member of Congress questioned DC's spending on World Pride and LGBTQ+ programs. As DC's delegate, should Congress have a role in reviewing or influencing the district's local budget decisions? Kenny?
100% no. This is one of the greatest affronts to our dignity. It's one of the greatest insults to our autonomy. It's a disgrace, and it's a 250-year-old mistake, and it is time to fix this problem. We should decide how we spend our locally raised tax dollars. We should decide what our values are, what our priorities are, and our budgets should reflect that. And then they should stand. When a majority of DC Council passes it, that should be the law of our city. And we shouldn't have to look up to 6 or 12 random Republicans from Florida or Texas or Idaho who, in a performative manner, overturn our budgets and overturn our values. It's a disgrace. It's a stain on the whole country.
Thank you. Councilmember.
Congress should not be able to meddle in our local budget. The 700,000 of us vote for our local government, and those decisions should be honored. And let me say something about pride. We have one of the proudest LGBTQ populations in Washington, D.C. I am proud to represent the highest per capita LGBTQ jurisdiction in Ward 2 in the world. And it is not only important to our inclusion, our celebration of who we are and who we love to do so safely, it's also good for our economy to have pride here. And so I will always fight for pride and will always stand alongside our LGBTQ residents.
Yes, I agree. The Congress should not be meddling in these affairs. I think one of the issues we've come to realize we all agree on is we don't like the red light cameras or the other traffic cameras here. But we all agree that that should not be the responsibility of the Congress to interfere with. It also reminds me why I believe we need to exempt DC residents from paying federal income taxes. We continue to send $30 billion a year to a government for which we don't have full representation. And then the members of the Congress of that government interfere in local affairs for which they have no business. And at some point, we have to decide that we have to cut off the funding for that, keep those dollars in the district so we can spend them on the priorities that are important for us here in the district.
I agree with everybody. Congress should absolutely not be interfering in DC's local affairs, including on this critically important issue. I worked with Congresswoman Norton with the House Oversight Committee for the last 8 years, and most of these bills go through that committee. I know the committee backward and forward. I know the members, I know the staff, and I know how it works, and I know how to fight all of these issues. I've stood up for the LGBTQ community as well in Congress, fighting to make sure that Congress didn't meddle in our local laws that do so many great things for that community. And so I've delivered on these issues every single day for the past 8 years.
Both of my grandfathers fought in wars and came home to a place that had less democracy than we were trying to give to the folks that they fought in the places that they fought. 2 decades later, 2 generations later, their grandson is a legislator who is supposed to direct where our taxpayer dollars go, and we still can't fully direct it because of that congressional oversight. That must change. That is one of the reasons I'm going to fight so hard to get on the Appropriations Committee. That will give us the best shot of protecting our budget so that we spend your money the way that you dictate and not the way that is dictated by Republicans or anybody else elected by people other than the residents of Washington, D.C.
And that concludes our questions, and as we move to the closing statements.
Indeed. And we will start with Councilmember Pinto again.
In 1 minute.
1 minute, yes.
Okay. Well, thank you again for a very interesting set of questions, and appreciate you and for hosting us here today. And thanks to GW, and welcome to Ward 2. I hope to be our next congressional delegate to continue what I've been doing my whole career. And yes, we have had a lot of legislative success when it comes to public safety, when it comes to revitalizing our downtown, when it comes to bringing the Washington Commanders home and building 6,000 new units of housing, when it comes to advancing our literacy. But the greatest training that I've had for this seat is the training of working with our residents and learning from our residents every single day. The most important and best ideas come from the conversations I have every day of the week with residents across the city about what they want to see. And it's your vision and dreams that I want to fight for to improve our economic prosperity, to improve our safety, and to support and protect our autonomy and make sure we're the 51st state.
So again, my name is Greg Yatsko. I'm a physicist. I have worked across all levels of government, and one of the things that I've learned in government is that you have to achieve success. So we can talk about things we're going to do, we can talk about the ideas, but at the end of the day, to build trust in relationships with the people that you represent, it's important to make progress. So I have a concrete set of issues that I think I can make real progress on in the next 2 years, which is why I want to serve the district. I have 2 young kids, they're here in the audience, and part of why I'm running is to show them that it's important to be engaged and involved in your community, to be a part of public service. When I came to Washington 27 years ago, I was a physicist by training, but I wanted to give back. I wanted to help solve problems, to use the training that I had to make a difference. And that's why 27 years later, I'm still here and why I want to run for why I am running for Congress and why I want to represent you in the Congress. So rank me number 1 or number 2 on June 16th. Thank you.
Well, thank you again for hosting this important election event. Elections are about contrasts, and the contrasts in this race could not be clearer. I know how to deliver for DC at the federal level because I've done it. This position is not like any other position in government. It's not like any other member of Congress, since you're fighting for our autonomy and for statehood. And it's definitely not being on the DC Council, where you're only working with fellow Democrats on local issues. This is working with 435 full House voting members, 100 senators, including Republicans and even some moderate Democrats who will do everything they can to overturn our laws and block our progress. I led the efforts in Congresswoman Norton's office to pass the DC statehood bill for the first time in American history. I fought every single anti-home rule attack for the better part of a decade. I fought to protect our federal employees, and I've been a federal employee in the executive branch of government. I led the effort to increase DC TAG awards by 50%. I fought to have our residents in the Federal Bureau of Prisons be located in facilities near DC and with the necessary program to help them with their reentry. So I know how to deliver for DC at the federal level because I've done it. The time right now is too important for politics as usual. Thank you.
Thank you all again for hosting and for everyone for being here and for tuning in. I'm asking for your vote. I am one of two people on this stage who's been a congressional employee in the office of the delegate. I'm one of two people on this stage who've been elected by residents of this city, but I'm the only one who knows every swath of this city. And I don't believe you can represent a city that you don't fully know. This is a time when civil rights are under attack, when home rule is under attack, when the middle class is under attack, and we need a fighter who knows the people in the places that are under attack and knows how to fight back. That is what I've done my entire career. That is why I went to the delegate's office. That is why I left Congresswoman Norton's office to run for the council. That is why I made a U-turn on my own plan and ran for this seat, because this time is too important to have someone elected to represent a city that they don't know, to sit in a delegate seat where they don't know the full power. We need someone ready to sprint on day one and who has a steel backbone when it is time to fight. That is the fighter I am, and I'm asking for your vote in this race.
There are only 16 full-time elected positions in this city. There are the 13 members of DC Council, there's the mayor, the attorney general, and the delegate. And they all have to work together to defend our rights and advance our interests. If you like the members of DC Council in this race, leave them on DC Council. They will still be part of the Sweet 16. That is the critical fighting force to defend us on Capitol Hill. But this one singular job, the delegate to the House of Representatives, is for somebody who has a national reputation and a national track record of fighting for DC and winning on the national stage. Eleanor Holmes Norton didn't come up through DC Council. This job has never been a stepwise promotion from DC Council. This job is for someone who has deep, long-standing, and widespread relationships on Capitol Hill and across the country in the business community, the nonprofit community, the foundation community. I am the only one in the race who has been fighting and winning for DC across 3 decades, across those sectors. And for this special, unusual job that doesn't have a vote, so you have to be twice as talented and twice as disciplined as every other member of Congress, I ask you please to send the person with that national experience. On June 16th, my name will be #1 on the ballot. I won the lottery. So I will be first. Please rank me first. And I thank you in advance for the opportunity and the privilege to serve this great city.
Thank you, candidates, so much for your time and answers. And thank you to all of you. Let's give them a round of applause. We appreciate your time.
And you can exit right behind you.
And folks, you all don't go anywhere because we have a mayoral debate coming up in about 4 minutes.
All right.
All right. I think that worked.
Hello, hello. So we have some media availability. If you would just come back through here, if you have one of the press badges, you're able to come through here and do We have a little bit of space if you would like to talk to any of the candidates back here. We are now going to run some of the commercials for our partner organizations. Please don't go anywhere. We're going to be transitioning into our mayoral debate shortly. Thank you all for being here.
Today, Washington decides its future. Public safety, housing, education, representation. These aren't just headlines, they're our lives. And at moments like this, you need more than sound bites. You need the full story. Read, watch, subscribe, support the Washington Informer.
The DC Democratic Party is the leading Democratic organization here in Washington, D.C. Of course, when most people think of D.C., they think of the Capitol and the President and the Congress, but we have 700,000 Americans that live here in the District of Columbia. And our role as a party is to engage those Democratic voters in issues on a local and national level. We meet once a month to talk about issues that pertain to D.C. residents. We actually move our meetings around the city so that residents feel connected to the organization, and we talk about issues that are important.
We're working on increasing turnout, registering more people, and becoming the 51st state.
The most important thing for me is to have a party and an organization that is active, whether it's housing, education, voter education, outreach, running for public office, and how to do that, and how to be successful, or even how to support local candidates or national candidates. We need to be that organization that provides that avenue for residents to be able to get involved in those particular topics. If you want to be involved in the DC Democratic Party, the door is open for you. You can find us on Facebook, you can find us on Twitter, but you can also visit our website at dcdemocraticparty.org, and there you can find out how you can get involved and where you can find what we're doing as an organization to engage residents in political conversations around the city. So if you want to help us fundraise, if you want to help us door knock, if you want to help us make phone calls on behalf of local and national candidates, this is the organization for you. Please feel free to give us a call, and we look forward to meeting you.
We serve families.
We support wellness.
We create housing.
We build futures.
We prevent homelessness.
We strengthen neighborhoods.
GWL believes that every resident deserves opportunity, safety, and respect.
Where do you come to
Okay, hello everybody. If you would please take your seats, we're about to get started with the next debate, the mayoral debate. All right, please take your seats. We're getting ready to start the next debate. Perfect. Okay, so I want to introduce our next wonderful moderators. We have Lorenzo Hall of WUSA 9, and we have Sam Collins of the Washington Informer, who are getting ready to come out here and get ready for the debate. Yes. Round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
All right.
All right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for spending your Saturday with us.
Right. Peace and blessings. Good afternoon, and welcome to DCision 2026, Delegate and Mayoral Debate. The mayoral debate, presented by the Washington Informer. For the mayoral debate, we are live from Jack Morton Auditorium here at the George Washington University. Thank you to our partners, once again, the DC Democratic Party, the Washington Association of Black Journalists, the Greater Washington Black Chamber of Commerce, and the George Washington Urban League. My name is Sam Ploquia Collins Jr., and I am Senior Staff Writer at the Washington Informer.
And I'm Lorenzo Hall with WUSA 9. Thank you again, everyone who is joining us here in person and those of you on the live stream as well. So today's debate is going to focus on the issues most important to district residents. Each debate is going to run, at this point, I guess a little more than an hour and 7 minutes. But before we begin, let's talk about the format. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. We'll then move into 2 rounds of directed questions. In each round, candidates will receive 1 question directed to them and will have 60 seconds to respond. The remaining candidates will have 20 seconds each to offer a response. And we'll ask follow-up questions if time allows.
Next, we'll have a lightning round. All candidates will be asked the same 6 questions and will have 30 seconds each to respond. There will be no follow-ups during this portion. Finally, each candidate will have 1 minute for a closing statement. Please note, all questions are asked by the moderators. We will be strictly enforcing time limits to ensure a fair and balanced discussion, and each candidate will receive equal opportunity to respond throughout the debate. We will also ask our audience to remain respectful. Please hold applause until the conclusion of each segment and refrain from any disruptions. This debate is being recorded and live streamed. With that, let's begin. Will our candidates come out? Please, by all means.
Well, we should tell you, joining us today, we're going to have Kenya McDuffie, Rennie Sampath, Gary Goodweather, Janice Lewis-George, and Vincent Orange. We can also tell you that we know they're in the building, so there we go, our talk show door.
All right, let's give them a hand.
You want to switch?
All right, so each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. We will start to our immediate left with candidate Orange, and we'll work our way down.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Vincent Orange. I'm a former Ward 5 and at-large council member, former DC Democrat National Committee man, attorney and a CPA, and a candidate for mayor of the District of Columbia. Our city is at a crossroads. Residents are concerned about public safety, rising costs, struggling schools, and whether government is being fully transparent about our financial future. These are serious challenges, but they're not new to me. I spent my career delivering results for the city, growing our local business economy, expanding workforce opportunities, and bringing investments to communities that need it most. Today, what we need is leadership grounded in measured outcomes, not political moments. My plan is focused on 4 commitments to the people of the District of Columbia. First, my plan is focused on public safety, restoring 4,500 police officers and making sure that we have visible community policing. Second, ensuring that every high school graduate has a pathway, a paid apprenticeship, college, including going to UDC tuition free, or entrepreneurship, and also just making sure that our students have an opportunity so no one is left behind. Third, we're going to grow our economy through a $2 billion investment in our certified business enterprises. The certified business enterprises economic engine is one that I grew. And then finally, we're going to make sure that we restore financial responsibility and accountability in this government. This election is not about headlines. This election is about outcomes. My name is Vincent Orange. I will be heavily number 7 on the ballot. I ask for your vote. So I want to be number 1 in your heart, but look at heavily number 7 on the ballot and check Vincent Orange. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to be here this evening.
Thank you. Louis George.
Thank you. Good evening, Democrats. I am Janice Lewis George, a proud third-generation Washingtonian, a proud product of DC Public Schools, actually graduating right up the street from School Without Walls right here on this campus, and Howard University School of Law. And I'm running to do what I've always done as an organizer, as an attorney, and as a council member for the last 6 years, and that is put people first. This election is about a simple question. Who do you trust to show up and fight for all of DC residents in all 8 wards? Who do you trust to address this affordability crisis when housing and utilities and childcare are too expensive and everyone from the middle class to the margins are feeling the squeeze? As council member, I've been able to block extreme increases to rent that were gonna hurt our seniors and our families. I've been able to ban utility shutoffs when the courts found that Pepco was overcharging us. And I've been able to put money in the pockets of working families through the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Pay Equity Fund that raised the wages for Black and brown women early childhood educators. It's also a question of who do you trust to stand up to Trump in this administration and protect our home rule? You can trust that I'm going to do that. I have authored the legislation to end cooperation with MPD and ICE. I've been in the streets during the occupation protecting my immigrant families and my Black youth, and I've been walking the halls of Congress myself, building relationships so that we are filibuster-proof and can protect our autonomy. And who do you trust to just make sure that basic government services like 911 and 311 work for you? As council member, I've been able to improve trash collection at multifamily buildings to stop the rats from coming in. I've been able to strengthen traffic safety around schools through my Safe Routes to School Act and get abandoned vehicles off the street through my abandoned vehicles legislation. That's how I've led as council member, with courage and moral clarity. And that's how I'm going to lead as your next mayor. And I look forward to sharing my vision with you tonight and solving it together. Thank you.
Gary Goodweather.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gary Goodweather. I'm running for mayor because I care, because I love this city, and I want to see every resident, every business thrive. We need to expect more as a city and from our city government. I've spent the past 15 months running for mayor of our city, and everywhere I go, I hear the same things. Everybody wants an affordable city. Everybody wants a safe city. It's how we do it. I was a former United States Army officer, and I took an oath to the Constitution before. When I'm mayor, I'm going to take another oath, and that is to serve our city. I am doing this. I am running for mayor of Washington, D.C., because I feel it is an obligation. I am called to service. Our city is in need, and I love every person in our city, and I see the potential of our city. Past 30 years, I've built 8 hotels in the DMV, one including in Noma, which helped kick off the Noma neighborhood. I sat on the Noma Business Improvement District Board. I earned an MBA with the concentration in finance from Johns Hopkins University. My company has built housing throughout the city by using neighborhoods' money, community money, long-term ownership to create wealth for our residents. I believe in the residents of this city, and we are not utilizing the resources that we have in the city to be able to create the city that we all envision. I will unite this city by including everyone, because that is how I believe that everybody succeeds and an individual exceeds together. Thank you.
Rini Sampath.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rini Sampath, and I'm thrilled to be here and be with you for the next hour and hopefully convince you that I am the right choice for mayor of Washington, D.C. I moved to the United States when I was 7 years old with my family in pursuit of the American dream. And here in Washington, D.C., that American dream does not work for everybody. And the reason is because D.C. government has a fundamental execution and mismanagement problem. I'm not a career politician. I am a tech director. I come from the technology sector. And I believe that the job of the mayor is not a legislative job. It's a job of an administrator. It's a job of an operator. And the way that we're going to fix our city is by putting a real administrator and operator in office. In DC, it takes on average 13 months to fill one affordable housing unit. It took an elected official in my neighborhood 3 years to fix a non-ADA compliant sidewalk. In one instance, a member of my community died of cardiac arrest because 911 coded his call incorrectly. These are the basics of government, and Washington, D.C. government is failing to deliver on its municipal promises. We can't fix these problems by legislating or spending more money and throwing more money at the problem. Instead, we need to hire real experts. We need to prioritize expertise over loyalty. We need to get a true administrator and operator in office, and we need to make sure that this city is run correctly. I got in this race because I know that Washington, D.C. can do better and that we can make this a world-class city if we have the right people in office. I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited to share more about our platform and share with you exactly why I would like to earn your #1 rank in this year's race. Thank you.
Kenya McDuffie.
Thank you and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kenya McDuffie, and I'm running for mayor of Washington, D.C. in order to fight and deliver for all D.C. That means all 8 wards and all 700,000 residents. I'm running to fight to protect D.C.'s home rule and make this city safer and more affordable. I'm running because I love Washington, D.C., but right now it's not working the way it's supposed to for the people with the greatest needs. I'm a 4th-generation Washingtonian. I was raised in a neighborhood called Stronghold. I actually grew up, and I'm living in now the home where I grew up, a home that my grandparents bought decades ago when they came to Northeast D.C. looking for many of the things that families are looking for today, a affordable home in a safe neighborhood. And I grew up during the 1980s and 1990s when this city was struggling financially and when it was much less safe. When I graduated from high school, Woodrow Wilson, now Jackson Reed, I didn't go to college right away. In fact, I didn't apply to a single college. All I wanted was a job. All I wanted was an opportunity. But the city was struggling, and there weren't a lot of jobs to be had. So I struggled. And it wasn't until I got a job, an opportunity to carry mail for the United States Postal Service, that my entire life changed. I'm running to create those types of opportunities for people across the District of Columbia so that they can see themselves reflected in the future prosperity of our city. I'm running because opportunity needs to show up in the communities where people are and not wait for people to show up at the Wilson Building. I'm running because I love Washington, D.C., but I'm also somebody who loves public service. And as a council member for 13 years, I've been delivering to make this city safer, to make sure that we have opportunity across the city. And I'm gonna make sure that as mayor, we're gonna end cooperation with ICE. We're gonna make sure we reduce utility costs, and we're gonna keep you safe by holding violent criminals accountable. Thank you, and I ask for your vote.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to jump into round 1, which is governance, leadership, and citywide strategy. Before we do so, I'm going to once again shout out the Greater Washington Urban League. I said George Washington Urban League earlier. Charged to my head and not my heart. All right, we'll start with candidate McDuffie. You have 1 minute, and your fellow competitors have 20 seconds. Candidate McDuffie, please speak to actions that you've taken during the second Trump administration in response to infringement on D.C. home rule. As mayor, how would you engage the administration, protect D.C. autonomy, and advance the district's interests when the federal government is both a landlord and an adversary?
As a council member, I showed up. I showed up at the halls of Congress to meet with members and with staff. I also showed up in conversations with my colleagues about how we strategize. I showed up in communities across the District of Columbia to understand the impact that this administration was having on residents across the District of Columbia. I showed up when I walked out of my home and saw an officer that was stopping a resident because he was black, because he was brown. And I showed up when I saw a checkpoint on North Capitol Street where most of the people being stopped were people in pickup trucks and on scooters. I'm gonna show up the way that I showed up as a council member, as mayor, putting fairness and justice first always. I'm gonna make sure that we, in cooperation with ICE on day one, and make sure that we are working with the Office of the Attorney General to use the litigation where necessary. I'm gonna show up every single day of the week for residents of the District of Columbia, but I'm gonna work with the federal government where possible and fight back where necessary.
Candace Sampath, 20 seconds.
My fear is that the next mayor may become an extension of the Bowser administration. And the reason I say this is because Mayor Bowser joined federal task forces that allow this type of encroachment. And the next mayor cannot allow this to happen. My fear is that with Mayor McDuffie, that's exactly what we're going to see. So hope to repair that.
Candy Goodweather.
When Trump first activated the National Guard and tried to federalize our police department, I put out a statement. And I said that, make no mistake about it, Trump did this. But DC opened the door. My colleagues on council opened the door to allow Trump to take over our city. The best thing I'm going to do is create a city that lifts every DC resident up and ensure that our budget is strong so that the administration cannot try to take over one of the
Candid McDuffie, you have time to rebut, given the call out.
Sure, I appreciate the rebuttal. I don't know that I need to rebut because I've been showing up for DC residents for 13 and a half years as a council member, and all I'm gonna do is continue to fight and deliver for residents. I'm not saying these things because I want your vote for mayor. I've been a civil rights attorney in President Obama's Justice Department. I've traveled the country investigating police departments, ensuring that they're engaging with constitutional policing. My track record is replete with the opportunity to make sure that justice lives in the District of Columbia, and I'm going to continue to do it as mayor.
Yeah, thanks. Candid Lewis George, please.
Thank you. As a daughter of the district, to me, fighting DC autonomy and fighting our statehood is a non-negotiable. That's why I introduced legislation in cooperation between MPD and ICE, which Mr. McDuffie did not sign on to. It's why I've been walking the halls of Congress and having conversations. One of those critical conversations with Hakeem Jeffries, our council had, Mr. McDuffie was not present for those meetings. The State Board of Education members have organized, the Free DC organized. He's not shown up to a single one of those organizations' calls at Congress, walking the halls of Congress, but I have shown up and had those conversations, and we're going to leverage those relationships as well. And I don't believe you can trust someone who says they're going to stand up to Trump when his campaign is taking Trump donor dollars.
Ken, go ahead.
Yes, well, first and foremost, we will not negotiate in fear, yet we will not fear to negotiate with President Trump in Congress. We will just make it clear what's non-negotiable. Non-negotiable is home rule, non-negotiable is DC autonomy, and non-negotiable is the pursuit of statehood. Other than that, we are going to examine and work with the Attorney General to make sure that we're within the bounds of the law in dealing with the White House.
Okay, this next question is for candidate Sampath. How do you plan to balance obligations to marginalized Washingtonians and members of the business community who are often at odds about taxation and how to fund social programs?
At the end of the day, it's important for our society in general in DC to recognize that our social safety net programs, all of the things that we care about, pay equity fund, childcare, making sure our LGBTQ community has the mental health support that they need, none of these programs can exist if we don't have a rich tax base. And this is why I am in opposition to some measures like the business activity tax. We need to be attracting businesses to Washington. We need to make sure it's easier for them to thrive. That's also one of the reasons why we as a campaign identified that permitting is extremely difficult in this city. And so we launched a small business permitting concierge. You can go on the website, on our website, and check it out. It actually is functional, and you're able to navigate what is the existing maze of government agencies and departments. DC makes it way too hard to open up a business and sustain a business in DC. That has to change. That's why we need the innovative thinking. We need a creative approach, and that's one of the reasons why we need a new generation of leadership in office.
Candidate Goodweather.
We're going to create an equity map and invest directly in DC residents and DC businesses so we know that where every dollar is going and what the outcome of it is. Our budget is, we've increased our budget 70% over the past 7 years. Our economy is down 8.5%. We need to take a look at the budget and double down on the services that are working, and the ones that aren't, we need to reallocate those dollars somewhere else.
Candidate Lewis George.
Thank you. The relationship is one that is symbiotic. The businesses need community and community need businesses. And so what we do is we set up a system in which we allow people to be able to afford to live here. When people can afford childcare and people can afford housing and people can afford groceries and utilities, that means those people are going to patronize our businesses. So making it affordable for every DC resident to live here is an incentive for our businesses. It's why things like paid family leave are so important. And I've been fighting to keep these things in place because that's...
Candidate Orange.
First and foremost, I'm going to be very transparent with the citizens of the District of Columbia. We don't have a money problem. We have a management problem. We have $22 billion, and of that $22 billion, $11.7 billion is generated by DC taxpayers. Yet those dollars are not being spent for their intended purposes. So those purposes need to be examined. What are we doing with all the surplus money? And we need to galvanize those dollars and make sure that we are addressing the citizens of the District of Columbia and the programs that should be funded.
We can't do the programs that we need to create more affordable housing, to protect child care subsidy, pay equity, and PKEEP, to make sure that we're engaging with youth and meeting them where they are, unless we're growing our economy. We cannot continue to be a one-sector city. We have to grow our economy, and I'm equipped to do that on day one.
Thank you.
Starting with candidate Goodweather, you have 1 minute. Local news outlets across DC have faced significant financial pressure, reducing coverage of neighborhoods, city government, and community accountability. What is your philosophy on the role of independent local media in the district, and what policies would you pursue to support its sustainability?
Yeah, look, I'm experiencing this right now in this campaign, and independent journalism is fundamental to our city, to our democracy, to ensure that this election is actually free and open. So what am I going to do? Number one is that we will create and I'm thinking about it as I talk, but we need to be able to have new revenue sources, sustained revenue sources for our independent media. I contribute to lots of different independent media, but like many nonprofits, unless there is a strong revenue stream, if there is a consistent revenue stream, it is very hard for journalists to be able to do their work and do their work well. So I think that there is an opportunity for the government. When I say the government, I mean other nonprofits and donors to be able to contribute to independent journalism because it benefits everyone.
Candidate Lewis George.
Yeah, our local media is so critical. They are a part of us as a democracy operating well. It means real oversight and a real look at what's happening. And it also means it gets to center local stories, because in Washington, D.C., oftentimes they refer to Washington, but they're not referring to our neighborhoods. And so for me, that's why I stood outside when many of the post workers were let go, and I stood out there and protested with them because I believe they deserve their jobs. It's also why I introduced legislation, the local news bill, to invest in our local businesses.
Candidate Orange, please.
Well, I certainly believe in freedom of the press, and I certainly believe in funding the press, but I also think it's a two-way street. If you look at this campaign season, I believe that the local media and press has been letting us down. They do not allow all candidates to come forward and participate in this process. To go back and take the Washington Post's logo. Democracy dies in darkness. And this election season is dying in darkness because we are all not being able to be heard on an equal basis.
I'm going to make sure that I speak up whenever I see the types of injustices that happen, whether it's in the local press or otherwise. But I'm also going to make sure that it's easier to start a business in the District of Columbia for whoever wants to do that. Making it easier to start a business allows those folks who want to start independent journalism in the District of Columbia to be able to do so. And so we're going to support the creative economy as well, because a lot of what's happening now are from influencers who are having more access to information and sharing it than some of the journalists that we have too.
Okay, this question is for candidate Louis George. Oh, go ahead.
Candidate Sam.
Oh, excuse me, sorry. Candidate
All good. Federal overreach is a huge threat, and this is another example. President Trump sent his cronies to a Washington Post journalist's home to threaten her completely, intimidate and harass her. Under my watch as mayor, that's not going to happen, because we will be employing the AG's office and making sure our journalists are protected. That's one of the ways in which we can uphold a free press, by making sure the mayor's office is using our pulpit to the best of our abilities.
Now we'll go. All right, candidate Louis George, do you believe the current CBE structure goes far enough to prioritize DC resident-owned businesses, or should the district create a separate tier with stronger contracting preference? And how would you ensure that policy delivers real economic impact?
Yes, one of the first things I did when I got to the council was actually fight for us to fund our disparity study. The disparity study was one that we were able to get an opportunity to see that many of our small businesses, CBEs, women-owned businesses were not getting their fair share of contracts in our city. I did ask my colleague, who was then chair of Business and Economic Development, to host a hearing on the findings of that disparity study, and he never would host a hearing on it. It's important to note that that disparity study gave us recommendations for how we could do better by women and minority-owned businesses. And as mayor, I'm going to use that study's recommendations and implement them to ensure that our small and minority businesses have an opportunity. I also want to note to the question about our media, open meetings was one of the ways we help support our local media. And I was the council member who voted against twice closing open meetings when my colleague, Mr. McDuffie, voted to close those meetings. If you want to support local journalism, open the meetings up and let them see real democracy in action. Thank you.
Candidate Orange.
Yes, I actually built the CBE community. When I first took it over, it was $0. And in this year's budget, there will be $1.5 billion spent with our DC certified business enterprises. And that disparity study showed that 37% of businesses in the District of Columbia are going to women and minorities. And there's only one jurisdiction that's ahead of DC, and that's Atlanta. So we're doing well. We can do better. But we went from $0 to $1.5 billion, and it continues to grow.
Candidate McDuffie.
So I actually funded the disparity study, and I funded the disparity study before Ms. Louis George was even on the council. I made sure that the disparity study actually got done. Nobody had to ask me, because I've prioritized DC-based businesses, particularly resident-owned businesses. I will continue to do that as mayor to make sure that the $1.5 billion we spend is actually going to DC businesses first. That's how you grow your economy. That's why you get people who live here to be workers in those businesses as well.
Candidate Sampath.
Respectfully, $13 million were stolen from local businesses while Mr. McDuffie, you chaired that particular oversight committee. It's really concerning under the existing leadership of our DC government that we have had continued kickback schemes and fraud and waste in our DC government. That's why we need new leadership. What we're doing today is not working, and it's got to change.
Candidate Goodweather.
Not in the current structure. We just attended the Black Business Task Force 2 weeks ago, and I spoke to multiple CBE certified women-owned enterprises, business owners, and neither one of them, one had been certified 5 years, the other one for 2 years, had not received a single dollar. So not until we can ensure that we are investing actually in our DC residents.
All right, next question, starting with candidate Orange. You have a minute, the rest 20 seconds. Under your mayoralty, what would the executive's relationship with the education system look like? Would you keep mayoral control over public schools? Explain why or why not.
Yes, I would keep mayoral control over the public schools. I've been dying to be ahead of the educational system for quite some time. the standards that I put in place will improve in 2015, and it's yet to be implemented. In addition to that, I will make UDC tuition free. I will make sure that every agency in the District of Columbia has a paid youth apprenticeship program upon graduating from high school to make sure that our young people have health benefits, retirement benefits, and entry-level jobs, and they will grow with the District of Columbia. So education is the key. I want to make sure that our third graders, upon entering the fourth grade, can read independently and can add, subtract, multiply, and divide, and to make sure that a middle school student is getting prepared to graduate. And when they graduate, the Orange administration will be standing right there at the door with 4 opportunities for you. UDC tuition free, college tag. If you stay in the DC, we're gonna give you more money because we need you here, as well as entrepreneurship. If you have a great idea, I'm gonna pitch you with our small local business development department. I want education under my control.
Candace McDuffie, please.
Yeah, as mayor, we're going to make sure that we keep education the foundation that all success is being built on. We're going to address overcrowding in overcrowded schools west of the park by making better quality schools east of the park. We're going to make sure we address absenteeism and fund special education to the amount that it requires. We're going to make sure we focus on early literacy and trades and apprenticeships for our middle school students, giving them early access to jobs that are being created projects across the district.
Candace Sampath.
Mayoral control or not, one thing's for sure, our existing leadership and career politicians have ensured that we don't have the outcomes despite having the highest spending per pupil in Washington, D.C. We have instead a school-to-prison pipeline with 3 times the national average for incarceration of young Black boys and girls in the city. That's unacceptable. That's got to change, and that's going to happen when we invest in our youth, make sure there's mental health counselors instead of school resource officers, and make our outcomes better.
Yes, I am going to maintain control over the schools under my administration because it is my responsibility to ensure that every child receives an outstanding education regardless of their needs. I'm also going to make sure that every educational professional is a subject matter expert and that they are mission driven. The mission being educating our children. If not, find somebody else.
And Lewis George, please.
Thank you. For me, education starts at birth to 3 all the way through to age 22, and we want to make sure students have access to opportunity. Under my administration, the chancellor will still report to me. However, I will work towards OSSI being an independent state education agency so we can have real checks and balances and oversight in our administration. I will also be addressing chronic absenteeism because if our students aren't in school, we can't close the literacy and math gap at all. Thank you.
That concludes round 1. Give our candidates a round of applause. Okay, so round 2 is going to focus on services, equity, and community impact. This question is for candidate McDuffie. You get 1 minute. The other candidates get 20 seconds to respond. So what are your thoughts on the Department of Behavioral Health's current in-school behavioral health model, particularly as it relates to a reduced reliance on community-based organizations? How would you ensure that CBOs remain meaningfully included in supporting the mental wellness of young people?
So when it comes to equity, I've been a champion for the District of Columbia to make sure they do all of its work through the lens of equity, whether it is the Department of Behavioral Health or any other agency. It's the reason why I authored the Racial Equity Achieved Results Act, which established the Council's Office on Racial Equity and the Mayor's Office on Racial Equity. When I'm Mayor of the District of Columbia, we're actually going to fully fund the Mayor's actual Office on Racial Equity so that it's doing its work properly, and we're measuring performance across agencies, including at DBH. We can take one agency, or we can take a stronger approach, a bolder approach, to make sure that all the work that government does is through the lens of racial equity. It's the only way in Washington, D.C. that we're going to actually make this city more racially equitable, more socially just, and more economically inclusive. And so I've been a champion for equity across agencies. The Department of Behavioral Health is just one of those agencies where we need to make sure that we are leaning all the way in to the resources that are necessary to achieve the outcomes that District of Columbia residents deserve.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Sampath.
After going through all of the DC auditors' reports, my fear here is that the DC sets benchmarks for itself, but consistently misses them. I'll give you one example. A couple of years ago, we decided that we were going to get 1 mental health counselor in every single school in DC. Has that happened? No. Instead, we have school resource officers who are contributing to the demonization of our young people, and that's got to change. And so one of the ways we need to attack this problem is make sure we have real behavioral health help.
Good weather.
I'm going to create an Office of Inclusion to ensure that every DC resident's voice is heard. And I think that we need to start looking at our city in a much more inclusive way and under the lens of that we are all human beings and that everyone deserves the opportunity to be successful.
Candidate Louis George.
Yeah. We have to ensure that we have the right pipeline and enough people to do the work. And that's why one of my key points is we're going to be leveraging our city as a university town. We have great universities, and all of these universities have schools of social work and mental health and support. And we want to make sure that our young people can learn how to get those jobs and training, go to our universities and come work for district residents. So for me, it's going to be about plugging that pipeline in so we have enough caseworkers and crisis responders to do the critical work, but work with our CBOs who have relationships. Thank you.
I'm the only candidate that accepted the invitation to visit the Hillcrest Medical Center at 9th and Rhode Island Avenue. I'm the only candidate up here that last week went and attended the anniversary of Cedar Hill Regional Medical Center. And I say that because those two work hand in hand. Those community-based operations provide employees or provide staffing there at the Cedar Hill. They also learned that they also provide staffing in some of the schools. So I'm not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Everybody wants to act like they want to start all over. We can't start all over. We have
Next question, starting with candidate Sampath. With major investments to make the Anacostia River a recreational destination, what specific steps would you take to ensure it is truly safe for swimming and fishing? 1 minute.
One thing's for sure, here in DC, we don't take environmental and climate justice seriously. We know that 90% of single-family homes in DC have flood hazard zones are actually in Ward 7 and 8. So the first step that I'm going to do is make sure that DOE actually publishes annual ward-level environmental burden maps. In other words, we're going to see in a publicly available dashboard contaminated sites, air quality, flood risk, and that's not something that exists today. So that's got to change. We also need to make sure that any contaminated sites, especially in Ward 7 and 8, are remediated quickly. I've talked about this time and time again throughout my campaign. We just don't handle the basics in DC well, especially with our service delivery. And that's another way in which we're going to make sure the Anacostia River cleanup actually happens. That we make this something that's publicly committed to and followed through by the mayor's office.
All right, candidate Goodweather, 20 seconds.
DC Water has planned to clean up the Anacostia and is executing on some of it. There's also a lot of nonprofits that are doing really good work to clean it up. I think in this case, we need to make sure that all those organizations have the right funding to be able to ultimately make the Anacostia swimmable.
Candidate Louis George.
Yes, I believe we need to address one of the biggest issues. The number one pollutant in our Anacostia River are bottles, plastic bottles. These plastic bottles are washing up in our river. They have what we call microplastics, and those microplastics cause cancer and fertility issues across the district. And so I have been supporting us getting rid of bottles in the river by incentivizing people to actually recycle and bring back those bottles so we could utilize them via the bottle bill. I think it's one of the best things we can do to actually help our Anacostia.
Candidate Orange, please. Yes.
Yeah, one of the first things I will do as mayor is to have an environmental summit with Governor Westmore and Governor Spanberger. We need to make sure that we are addressing this as a DMV problem. And this is a regional problem, and we all have to chip in and make sure that we are addressing our waterways, we're addressing environmental concerns, because what happens in Maryland, it flows down to us.
Time.
And we need to work together.
Candidate McDuffie.
As Ward 5 council member, I championed environmental justice across Ward 5, a ward that had been used to being a dumping ground. We turned things around. We made sure that there was things being done in Ivy City with the environment. And as mayor, I'm going to make sure that we're fighting to clean up the Anacostia, but we're also going to make sure there's zero-emission city fleets so they're not polluting neighborhoods like they are today. Full lead-free DC implementation, as well as expand community solar. We're going to make sure that we take the work that DC is doing in the environment to the next level, leaning in to environmental.
This next question is for candidate Goodweather. Again, all the other candidates have 20 seconds to respond. The RFK campus redevelopment will bring major investment to DC's Ward 7, but residents worry about displacement. So what steps will you take to ensure that DC residents living near the stadium right now can remain rooted in their neighborhood?
Number one, let's just be clear about that deal. It will go down in American history as the number one or number two largest developer giveaway. And I've done development. That is not economic development because it does not put money directly in DC residents' pockets. So what are we going to do? First of all is I am creating a civic-wide core. It's a workforce development program, and it will ensure that all the DC residents have the skills and the pre-qualifications to directly get work, to get business from all the contractors and be able to start their own businesses to be able to receive dollars from the District of Columbia. It is about ensuring that the dollars that we as a city are using go directly into DC residents' pockets and businesses.
Thank you. Candidate Louis George.
Thank you. As you know, I fought to the very end. Myself and Councilmember Parker fought to the very end to ensure that RFK had project labor agreements and labor peace agreements. That was district dollars and district jobs for district residents with actual benefits. I also fought for us to have a displacement fund. And unfortunately, my colleague, Ms. McDuffie, voted against it, so we weren't able to create a displacement fund. But what we are going to do is also ensure that any development on that property go to Ward 7 and 8 and 6, 5 residents who surround that.
Candidate Orange.
As mayor of the District of Columbia, that project will have to come to fruition during my administration. And I will ensure that folks east of the river have a seat at the table and make sure that there's good, affordable housing. And I'm not talking about 80% of the AMI. I'm down at 40, 50% of the AMI. I'm going to make sure that citizens east of the river are able to get jobs and opportunities there. And I'm also going to address the issue at Langston Golf Course that should be a part of that whole model as well.
Candidate McDuffie.
So I was pleased and really proud to be able to be at the table to help negotiate the deal for the District of Columbia. I was pleased to be able to negotiate the Community Reinvestment Fund that's going to send millions of dollars to prevent displacement at that site. And we worked out a $50 million CBA that's creating jobs. We prioritized Ward 7, 8, and 5 first and contracts first.
Candidate Sampath.
DC government has an execution problem, and every development plan should be paired with a race and equity plan. So we make sure that there's actual forward thinking. 6,000 homes are supposed to be built with the RFK Stadium, but only 30% are affordable, and the delivery has already been pushed back. We need to make sure that we're protecting our renters' rights in that region. And it's YIMBYism, but it's also we have to protect our renters. That's the reality of the situation. So under my administration, we will have an equity plan that names how we will do exactly that.
Thank you.
Next question, we'll start with candidate Louis George. You have 1 minute. Of the candidates, 20 seconds. Public charter school leaders have long raised concerns about equitable funding, including support for fixed costs, early childhood services, and workforce programs. With public schools and public charter schools now serving nearly an equal share of district students, how would you address these concerns and ensure equitable funding across both systems?
Yeah. As a mayor, it's important that you understand all of our students go to all of our schools, and public charter schools and public schools are public schools. And so when it comes to that, there's no playing games with our young people. They deserve investment. The one way we can fix that is by making every dollar go through the USPSF funding model, which is what is not happening now, and then there's the major issue. So every dollar will go through that same USPF funding model so that we can ensure the equity that is deserved there across both sectors. And many of these issues we face together, public safety, transportation, and closing gaps. And so for me, we are one education system, and our children's success is what that is at the top of my mind. Thank you.
Candidate Orange.
I stand here before you as a better chance student, having had the best of public school education and having had the best of private school education. So I support both. At the end of the day, I want an educated person that's ready for opportunities. And so it really doesn't matter where they're educated at, but we need to make sure that they have equal services, that there's equal funding, and that everyone can rise through whatever educational system they find themselves involved in.
Many thanks. Candidate McDuffie.
I'm going to say it again. Education is the foundation upon which success is built on. We need to have stronger DC public schools and DC public charter schools. We need to make sure that the DC public schools and DC public charter schools in the highest needs areas get all the funding that they deserve. Under the law, it's required that the UPSFF follow the student. We're going to make sure that the money goes both for operations and for facilities for DCPS and DCPCS.
Give thanks. Candidate Sampath, please.
We need to adjust the per pupil formula so that it adjusts for inflation every year, because the reality is that the state of our facilities, our HVAC systems, there are schools in DC that don't have heat, particularly in Ward 7 and 8. And in order for us to do that, we need to make sure we're managing our money correctly. And that's not what DC government is good at today. We need a true manager in that CEO's office, making sure that that money gets to exactly where it needs to go.
Many thanks. Candidate Goodweather.
Charter schools are public schools. They will have equal funding. However, everybody's got to play by the same rules, whether it's a DCPS or a charter school. All of the requirements and all of the standards have to be the same, and the outcomes have to be measurable, whether it's DCPS or whether it is a charter school.
All right, sticking with education, this next question will start with Candidate Orange. With chronic absenteeism in DC public schools still near 40%, what is one concrete step you would take to get more students back into the classroom and to keep them there?
Well, the first thing is we need to make sure that we have internal controls. We have numerous students being absent, but it's not being reported. And what I don't understand is why, if the teacher's in there taking roll and that information doesn't flow up to the principal's office, then it is addressed. In addition to that, we need to understand, why are our kids missing school? Is it something going on at home? Is it that they're not being accepted in the school environment? Is it that they need special services? I know for our 3 and 4-year-olds, we need to make sure that we're assessing their eyesight. We're assessing their ears so they can hear. And then make sure there's nothing going on in the home so they can take that seat as a kindergartner. We need to examine the curriculum to make sure that we have a curriculum in place that's going to provide the students with success when they sit for that assessment in the 4th grade. So it's a comprehensive approach to this. Wraparound services are needed, and we need to get into the homes and find out what is actually going on. But we must hold the chancellor, the principal, the teachers, and the parents accountable, because it takes all of us to ensure that that student is going to be in class.
Candidate McDuffie.
Absenteeism, chronic absenteeism, and truancy are way too high in our public schools. And we need to meet parents where they are to make sure that young folks, students in our public schools, are getting all the supports and services that they need so that they're ready to learn once they get to the school building. We need to make sure the resources are in the communities where these kids are coming from so that we can address chronic absenteeism, because then if you don't, it leads to truancy.
Thank you. Candidate Sampath.
We have to remember that with a topic like this, punishing parents is never going to work. So I just want to make that clear. Crime across the board by locking up parents for anything from truancy to juvenile crime is not going to work. We have to address the root cause of a lot of these problems, and that has to do with real relationship touch points. There's proven research that if we're able to reach out to the parents, go to the family homes, and see what is going on, we're going to be able to see significant improvements in students showing up to school.
Candidate Goodweather.
We're going to hire more social workers, mental health professionals, and I will say this until I don't need to say it again, mental health is health. We're going to hire more special educators. We know that high impact training works. We need to ensure that our kids want to go to school, that they feel that they've got a purpose and belonging. And I have a youth track in my civic corps to ensure that they have the resources and that the community steps in when it needs to.
Candidate Louis George.
Yeah, we're going to have one agency assigned to addressing chronic absenteeism. Right now we have 5 agencies, and that's why we lose students. We're going to invest in home visiting homes and figuring out why are children not in school, and then partnering those parents who need more support with our collaboratives throughout the city, our family collaboratives. We are going to invest in after school and before school programming, and we're going to invest in music, arts, and sports so young people are excited to come to school and have the mentorship they need through those investments.
Thank you.
All right, family, we are going into the mayoral quick hitters. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to answer these questions. We'll start with candidate McDuffie. DC voters will use ranked choice voting for the very first time in this election. What do you want voters to consider when deciding how to rank candidates beyond their first choice?
I want voters to make a plan. This is the first time we're going to have ranked choice voting in the District of Columbia. and research shows that first time is generally where it gives the most challenges to voters. And so I want to make sure that voters in the District of Columbia are doing their research and making a plan about how they want to vote. But in the race for mayor, I want to make it really easy for them. I'm #1 on the ballot. I want you to rank me #1.
Candace Sampath.
I think ranked choice voting is one of the best things that happened to our city because fundamentally it allows new voices, even like me or Mr. Goodweather, to jump into this race and have a shot at this thing. And so if you're out there and you are thinking about your favorite candidate, rank them #1. Hopefully that's me. And then for your second candidate, think about that person who's also holding similar values to your #1 candidate. Who's that person who's going to stand up for our communities who are most impacted? Who's not going to be a continuation of our existing administration that has failed so many of our Washington, D.C. residents? That's the way I want our residents to think about this year's RCV.
All right, go ahead.
I didn't jump into this race. I've been running for 15 months because I want to serve our city. With regards to ranked choice voting, this is a game changer, and I really want everybody to understand that. Please, please get educated on how the system works. It's actually not as hard as people say that it is, or think what you've been told. #1 is when you're looking at candidates, look at who, as some of my colleagues say, shows up every day, 7 days a week, and doesn't just say they show up, but truly cares about our city and wants to see every resident's success.
Many thanks, Candidate Lewis George.
Yeah, I'm so excited about this ranked choice voting race. And I have said it again, I think people should judge based on who do you trust to show up and fight for all residents in all 8 wards of this city based on their experience and based on their record. Who do you trust to lead with moral clarity and courage? And I hope that answer is ranking me first as your choice for mayor.
Janice, you didn't even show up for your own ward last week during the Ward 4 Faith Leaders and Concerned Seniors Forum. We're waiting for you.
You know what? And I called them and let them know that I was still also at another forum on that and another.
Let them know while we were.
No, I emailed. I already texted them and I texted them.
Time.
Yeah, I did. I reached out to the Ward 4 Faith Leaders and let them.
Okay.
Candidate Orange.
Well, first and foremost, I just want all the voters to know that ranked choice is extremely important because none of the candidates up here are going to get 50% on the first go around. So that's the reason why that second choice is extremely important. And also know this, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. Hey, I'm Heavenly 7, I'm #1 in your heart, and I'm looking to be first on June 16th. Absolutely.
Okay. I love this question here. And this one we'll start with candidate McDuffie. What's your strategy to foster an amicable, collaborative relationship with the DC Council?
My strategy is to continue to make sure that we engage and meet people where they are. I've had a successful track record of authoring some of the most transformational legislation in recent history of the DC Council, and it's largely because of the ability to work across differences. It's been an approach that I've taken in public service, but it's also values that are steeped in my upbringing. When I prioritize respect, I prioritize dignity, I prioritize civility, something that is sorely needed in our politics these days.
Thank you. Candidate Sampath.
I think the first and most important trait has to be honesty and integrity. We can't have secretiveness between DC Council and mayor, or I should say more so the mayor in this case. Mayor Bowser vetoed a bill that would have allowed us to have greater transparency and insight into force that's being used in our communities by law enforcement. The will of the people should have been respected by Mayor Bowser in that instance. It would have made our safer communities far safer, but instead we got a result that we have today, which is the Mayor Bowser continuing to stand on her pulpit and go ahead and govern the way that she wants. And so the secretive must end. We must prioritize honesty.
Candidate Goodweather.
It's my job as mayor to lead. It's to lead the city and to create a vision for everyone and focus on the details. I will work with council to be able to not just every week, every day if needed, because the communication between the council and the mayor is imperative. And it is also my job to have council members understand why it benefits their residents, why it benefits their constituencies.
Candidate Louis George.
Thank you. This is one of the reasons I'm running, because in this moment when we are fighting these crises from housing to the Trump administration, we need an administration that is working together with the DC Council and Attorney General Brian Schwab. We got to be all on the same page and fighting and working strategically together. And that looks like having meetings together, working on our budget together, having a budget meeting where we come together and say, what are our priorities? What are we going to do? Using our oversight of our agencies from other council members and saying, hey, you're really good in health. Help me understand how my agencies can perform better. Because the understanding is that when we work together, government works better for the people of this city, and that's who we all ultimately serve.
Candidate Orange.
I'm going to always be transparent with you. What this is all about is, can you count? If you can count to 7, you get your bill passed. As mayor of the District of Columbia, I'm going to be counting on 5, because if I have a veto, the only way it can be overruled is if they come up with 9. I need to come up with 5. I'm the most accomplished legislator up here. I had at least 40 pieces of legislation that have passed, and you get to touch and feel the Vincent Orange legislation throughout this entire city. In economic development, school modernization, school recreation, minimum wage, DC Emancipation Day. It was all because I learned how to count. 7 and 9.
All right, next question. We're starting with candidate Sampath. What's your strategy to increase housing affordability for district families?
Housing affordability needs to be viewed in 3 simple ways. 1, we have to build more. We have to also protect our renters while we build more. And we need to lease up units faster. I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, it takes 13 months on average to fill 1 affordable housing unit in DC, and that's because of the city's mismanagement and inability to execute. And when it comes to building more, we have a lot of really slow permitting abilities. We need to make sure we're upzoning, single-stair housing up to 8 stories, eliminating parking minimums near transit. These are all simple ways in which we can allow DC to actually build and bring the cost of housing far lower.
Candidate Goodweather.
Number 1 is we're going to completely revamp the permitting and approval process here in Washington, D.C. I've spent the past 30 years building in this city, and about 10%, 15% of our costs are just to get started. And in terms of actually creating affordable housing, it is, we have to determine what that means, who is affordable. And additionally, we need to build more. We need to build, I've committed to building 50,000 new multi-generational homes.
Candidate Louis George.
Thank you. We got to build more. We got to build better, which means more family-size units. And we got to build near transit. We have to make it easier to build. We have to incentivize building, and I'm going to make sure government steps up to build the deeply affordable housing we have failed to build as a city. And we cannot just rely on the market to build that deeply affordable housing. We're also going to expand the pathways to home ownership for a generation of Washingtonians who want to live here by leveraging our HPAP and our EPAP dollars to allow more pathways to home ownership. And we're going to protect our tenants and make sure that there is real enforcement from our housing agencies and making sure they're living in habitable conditions in housing.
Many thanks. Candidate Orange. Thank you.
You know, as mayor, I need to show short-term victories right away. I'm going to take the $100 million that's put in the Housing Production Trust Fund on an annual basis, and I'm going to build 1,600 square feet units. Those units are going to be for first responders, they're going to be for seniors, and it's going to be for students that just graduated from college and minimum wage workers. And that $100 million, our certified business enterprises will be the one to build those units that's costing $75,000. Once I get that victory in the first year, then everybody's going to get on board the same way they have when I've had other victories, and you have to work to get on board. I don't care about the bureaucracy because I'm the mayor, and I'm going to get it done.
Appreciate you. Candidate McDuffie.
Every resident in the District of Columbia deserves to live in a safe and affordable home. We have to build more housing across incomes, including deeply affordable housing, and we have to do it faster. As mayor, I'm going to make sure that we cut permit time so that it doesn't take us long to pull a permit to build the housing that we need. I'm going to make sure that we reduce the costs associated with building housing, especially the per unit affordable housing costs. We're going to make sure that we build 12,000 units of new affordable housing, preserve 20,000 units, and build 1,500 family-size units in my first term.
Thank you. So DC's juvenile curfew policies are under active debate right now. Should the city expand curfew enforcement or shift toward alternative solutions? Candidate Goodweather, we'll start with you.
Sorry, will you kindly ask the question again?
DC's juvenile curfew policies are under active debate. Should the city expand curfew enforcement or shift toward alternative solutions?
Not necessarily expand them. Look, curfews are an extreme measure. And if you have curfews in place, it means that there is a fundamental failure of the structures that are the existing structures. And you need to make sure that you have a timeline to get out and a remediation path. As I've mentioned, I'm creating this citywide civic corps where our youth has a place to be mentored and has a place to get real skills and a place of purpose and belonging. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Lewis George.
Thank you. As many know, I voted for the youth curfew in the past as a tool. But I think as an executive, you have to choose when you use tools and you have to use them wisely. And I do not think it's wise to use this curfew tool right now when we are under federal siege by the federal government. We have armed troops who are enforcing curfew on our children, and we cannot risk our children having enforcement by federal agents who are not trained in de-escalation and who are not accountable to the DC government through any form of accountability. I went to Navy Yard myself, and I saw 7-year-olds frightened to go up the escalator because they saw armed troops. That's not how we lead in this moment, and that's not how we leave our youth and our families at risk.
Candidate Orange.
Very clear. Prevention when possible, enforcement when necessary, and opportunity for all. If I have to use the curfew to stop action, then I'm going to use the curfew. But at the same time, as mayor, and what I don't understand from the council and the mayor, you can open up the recreation centers right now. You control them. You can open up these facilities and allow these kids to come in right now. What is the problem? It's all this rhetoric and it's all this talk. You're doing nothing. Like James Brown says, talking loud and doing nothing. And you got the power. That's what I don't get. You have the power to address the issue. Do your job and address the issue.
Candidate McDuffie.
Yes, we should extend the curfew, but it is only a temporary measure. We have a really serious situation right now with young folks who are showing up by the hundreds, risking their own safety and the safety of others. To do nothing is a dereliction of duty. And so we need a curfew temporarily, and we need to continue to address the root causes of crime so that we're showing up for young folks in the communities where they are, so they have no reason to go up and show up at Navy Yard or U Street or someplace else. We have to show up for young folks with opportunity, with the same urgency as if somebody's called 911.
Thank you. Candidate Empath.
The fact that we even have the curfew up for debate is an excellent example of how DC government has failed young people. The fact that this is even on the table. First and foremost, yes, this is a temporary measure that we need to take until DC government actually gets their act together and makes sure students and young people have year-round employment. Marion Barry Summer Youth Employment Program should be year-round. Let's get these young people good jobs, internships, and small businesses that matter. Let's give them places to go, enjoy, be with one another, be with community, and then we'll get to a point where we can effectively say no curfew is needed.
Thank you.
All right, next, the final question among our quick hitters. We'll start with candidate Lewis George. Should the city actively push for more in-office work to support the local economy, or should the city adapt to long-term remote work trends?
I think it's a great question. Obviously, after the pandemic, work has changed and people are just not going in person to jobs like they used to. We are in the age of Zoom meetings. And so we have to be careful and thoughtful about that. Because we don't want to lose workers, which many people do because they want to put in these stringent codes of like everybody has to be in the office at the every single day. That's just not the reality anymore. And so I think we have to have a real conversation, work with our government workers, and many who I'm proud to be endorsed by because we've had these conversations and allow them the flexibility they need to be able to be parents, to be able to be caretakers, but also make sure they're getting their jobs done and meeting the metrics. And I think there's a balance there that really values our workers and value the work that we need to do.
Appreciate you. Candidate Orange.
Hey, listen, without vision, the people shall perish. We don't have vision. We're not pivoting to our new economy. I'm upset that Prince George's County is getting the sphere. The Sphere should be at New York Avenue when you come into the city. We have to pivot to become a family entertainment destination. The same way Las Vegas, they pivoted because they knew they couldn't just count on gambling. So they now attract families. All the activities there for family. Our greatest products are restaurants, theaters, tourism. We get 25 to 35 million people coming to our city on an annual basis, and we need to make sure we attract more.
Many thanks. Candidate McDuffie.
We need to give residents and tourists a different experience. We can't continue to be a sleepy government town. We have to make sure that we are investing in marketing this city and telling a different story about all the things you can do in Washington, D.C. Sure, we're the home to monuments, museums, and the mall, and those are great things that are really stability for our economy. But the reality is we have to give people a different experience by focusing on Destination DC, Events DC, and making it more attractive to be in Washington, D.C., both for workers and for visitors.
Candidate Sampath.
My background, I've been the chief of staff over an organization of over 400 people. I have a human capital change management background. This is what I've studied, I've learned, I've spent my career doing. At the end of the day, we shouldn't be, as a government, dictating how these businesses should be run. What we do need is more businesses. So let's bring the jobs to DC. We're first in the nation for first-year business failures. Let's make it easier for businesses to actually operate, reform our tax code, make sure permitting is easier, make sure the businesses have resources and mentors so they can navigate a very complicated cycle. And so when we bring more jobs to DC, then we'll have a different conversation on how they want to actually operate their businesses.
Thank you. Candidate Goodweather.
I consult for universities and nonprofits on the workplace environment, as well as return to the office. Here in Washington, D.C., it's not one or the other, and it is not forcing any business. We are not in the business, the government is not in the business to tell businesses how to do what they do. It is also important that we build a city where that is affordable, that DC residents can work in, can live in, can send their kids to school in, so that we are all, the city that I envision is one that you can do all of it in our city.
Thank you.
Survived our quick hitters. Thank you. It is time now for closing statements. Each candidate gets 1 minute. We will start with candidate Orange.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to remember one thing. Washington, D.C. deserves leadership that delivers results. Leadership that delivers results. Check out the record. Go to ChatGPT. Put us all in there. Check out the record. I have delivered in economic development, school modernization, recreation centers, Emancipation Day, minimum wage, make sure our children got their books for their course subjects, got the tip wage workers 5 days of sick leave pay, made sure and negotiated the existence of both restaurants and food trucks to be in this city. I have been there. I know how it works. Plus, I come to the table with a different vision. It's a new vision. But we have the energy to get it done. We're going to pivot and make sure that the District of Columbia runs well. We're going to jumpstart our community, jumpstart our economy. I did it with the certified business enterprises, took them from $0. Look at the fiscal year 2026 budget, $1.5 billion for CBEs. And there's more to come in an orange administration. Heavenly 7 on your ballot.
Candidate Louis George.
Thank you. DC Democrats, this is time for a new time here in our city. The status quo isn't going to cut it. The Democratic Party in this city has to be the party of working people and working families, because many of us from the middle class to the margins are feeling this affordability crisis. And you deserve a mayor who's going to stand up and address this affordability crisis, from housing to utilities to childcare. We have a plan to make sure families can actually afford to live here. You need someone who's ready to stand up to this administration to protect our immigrant communities, to protect our Black youth, to protect our seniors who deserve a place in the city that they have built. We need leadership that is going to fight for residents in all 8 wards of this city and understand that equality and equity are not the same thing. And you need to pour into the communities that we have left behind. That is why I have stood up to run. That is what I've been doing as a council member, standing up for the residents of this city, because I know that DC is better when working families can stay here, when we fight back for our city and our statehood and our autonomy, and we are a city that actually takes care of each other. I hope that you will rank me first for mayor so we can have a people-first city that you all can believe in. Thank you.
Good weather.
We do need to expect more from our city and from our city government. And I will create a city that is affordable. And what that means is that every child can receive an outstanding education regardless of their needs. It will be a city that is not just feel safe, but truly safe. 3 things that I'm going to do immediately is create a citywide civic corps that is dedicated to service and to provide our DC residents with the skills and the mentorship that they need to thrive. I'm going to completely revamp the Department of Buildings and Professional Licensing. Trying to get a license and having it costly is unacceptable when we are trying to promote business here in our city. And I'm going to appoint experts in every part of our leadership, and they will be mission driven. The election is ranked choice voting. I'm asking for your #1 choice, and I very much want to be your mayor, and I look forward to serving you.
Thank you. Candidate Sampath.
Community, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time to spend this afternoon with us. My name is Rini Sampath, and I'm proud to be in this race. My grandmother had a first grade education. My grandfather had a 7th grade education, and now I'm standing before you as the first South Asian person to make the mayoral ballot in DC history. I'm thrilled about this. I'm happy about this. And I want that kind of opportunity for every single person in DC. The way DC is working today, it's not going to happen. DC is failing on its municipal services. The Democratic Party needs to be the party of execution. We're going to do that when we bring data to the equation, when we think innovatively, when we think creatively. I've got a technology background. That's why in this race, we revised the 311 app. We built a tax dashboard. We built a small business permitting concierge, because with our background, young people who all believe that DC government can work better and will work better, we can usher in a new generation of leadership to Washington, DC, and make sure that it serves you. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate McDuffie.
Thank you to the DC Democrats, and thank you to GW, and thank you for everybody for attending today. I'm running for mayor to fight and deliver for all DC. It means all 8 wards, all 700,000 residents. And this election really comes down to who gets to decide DC's future. Will it be you, the people who work here, live here, play here, raise their families here? Or will it be outside influence from folks who are not vested in the same way that you are? I'm building a coalition because that's what works in the District of Columbia. I'm gonna be a mayor that governs the same way that I've led as a council member. Building a coalition across differences. We're going to lead across all 8 wards because I believe this city works best when we bring people together and not divide them. You've heard a lot of ideas in this race, but we have to be honest about what works for Washington, D.C. I'm running to be your mayor, to keep you safe, to invest in education and quality schools, and to make sure we transform the future of District of Columbia in a way that protects our home rule.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's give our candidates another hand.
And that does it for our debate, Decision 2026, presented by the Washington Informer. Thank you all so much for being here and being part of this conversation.
Another shout out to our other sponsors real quick, the DC Democratic Party, the Washington Association of Black Journalists, the Greater Washington Black Chamber of Commerce, and the Greater Washington Urban League. Peace and blessings, family.
Way to go.
Thank you, man. My man.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you guys enjoyed the forum and the conversation. We do have to leave the building ASAP, so if you guys can politely just exit the building as soon as you can. Thank you so much.